public speaking time responses. We'll manage that under item 8.2. 6B, leave of absence. Any leave of absence? Jocelyn Pravno, you got your hand up.
Thank you. I don't need a leave of absence, but in question time, Mr. Hunter asked a number of questions of council staff and they haven't been answered.
Okay, can I just say
so
that
it would be useful to have those answered, please.
Jocelyn, that will be managed when during the staff presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So there's no leave of absence, right? Matters of an urgent nature, I have not been given any. The mayor's report, there's no report as such, but I'd like to take the opportunity to mention the fact that the Emergency Operations Center closed last week, and the staff all folded back to sort of main council business. I think it has been a fantastic delivery of service, I can say, from the welfare team under strenuous circumstances, and also congratulations to the community group that have helped. One of the things that people don't know, and I've started to tell the story, is early on when this thing, level 3, the medical officers that briefed myself and the welfare team managers and controller spoke about the impact of the virus, the profile impact of the virus, and our welfare team overlaid our demographics here, and they crunched the numbers, and we were looking at more than 200 people dying. This is like really serious stuff. We didn't publicize that for obvious reasons, but this has borne very heavily on our senior management team in terms of how we are going to react and what we need to do. I mean, it's really hard times when you've got to think, you know, our mortuary is capable of handling the bodies. How much space can we have in our cemeteries, and who are the staff who are going to be working around this? This is heavy stuff, right? So I'm glad that we've gone through this, and the people have worked well together. And I want to also say that, look, kudos to the council staff, because we had to take the strict direction from the Ministry of Health. There have been, you know, unlike other circumstances, there have been other key players in this that's added to some level of confusion even. But despite all that, I think the team worked really well. So congratulations to the chief executive and your staff in carrying this out. I wouldn't like to start mentioning some of the key people, but I think they know who they are. Thank you. We're down onto the reports. The first report we have is adaptation of fees and charges on page 6. I think we got Chris Pierce reporting on it. Chris.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. Chris has had to shoot off, so unfortunately, you'll have me. So, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll take the report as read. It starts on page 6 of your agenda, and there are 9 recommendations on page 9. This is a follow-on from our meeting with yourselves on the 30th of April. In keeping with the process of the last 6 years, we typically approve the fees and charges for the following year early. That's for efficiency, so that we can advise customers of the following year's fees. And in particular, it's done to ensure a very smooth process regards dog registrations. So provided you approve it today, it enables the team to start processing the invoicing for the dog registrations as they are due on or before the 31st of July. In terms of the appendix, there is an error in the footer. For those of you that did spot it, thank you. The error is it's referring to the current annual plan. So that has been picked up and will be corrected to say the annual plan for 2021. Paragraph 7 of the report details the exceptions. As you know, what you agreed on the 30th of April is that the fees and charges for 2021 will remain at the same rate as the current year's fees and charges, although there are some exceptions. Those are detailed on paragraph 7 of the report, and those exceptions are due to either changes in legislation, or we are adding a little bit more detail to provide more clarity to our ratepayers, or we're just reflecting the wording around the costs, and the change to the costs are actually more accurately reflecting the mode of delivery to enable cost recovery. So, for example, where in the current year we're charging for 45-minute time slots, and what we're seeing is actually it's taking up to 60 minutes. The charge per 45 minutes has just been increased to a charge per 60 minutes using the same charge per minute. So on that basis, Mr. Mayor, I will take the report as read due to concerns around the time, and I'm happy to move and answer questions.
Jocelyn Pravnov. Jocelyn, you there? She's not.
She doesn't seem to be around. Do you want
I
to?
am around.
The hand
I
came
am
up.
around. So I don't know whether you can see me or not. I just thought I have to scroll through my document at the same time and read all my little notes. So the building, on page 11, the building consent charges, do these, so what is it going to be the impact of the new announcement that's come out about the Building Act removing, you know, a lot of these single-storied buildings for requiring a resource consent, or building consent, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor. I don't see that on page 11, but I might just refer to either Angela or Natasha. It's obviously outside the scope of the paper, but I'll refer to either Angela or Natasha if they're free. Yeah,
so I suppose I've referred to that page just because it's building consent fees and they are not in it. Okay, it's just scrolling down.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I can respond to that if you'd like.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I was just getting unmuted. Those Building Act changes are still proposed. The legislation hasn't gone through yet, so we haven't made any amendments to our budget forecast for what that might mean for us. But my understanding is that we don't expect that it will have a large impact on what we're doing. But as I said, it's still proposed, and we haven't assessed the budgets on that basis.
Yeah, so aren't they coming into play in August? Can you hear me? Am I on mute?
Oh, we can hear you.
Okay, yes. Yeah,
sorry, yes, I was muted again.
Okay.
So the legislation hasn't been passed yet, so we haven't. So there's no. It may well be a tentative date, but there's nothing that is certain about when those will come into play.
Okay. Okay. So page 12. I don't like this.
Have you got another question?
I've got a number of questions that I'm just trying to get, you know, basically to scroll through my document. It's so.
Can we come back to you?
No. So now we're going into yes, on page 24. Around the animal dog fee. So I know I asked the question whether or not you had to pay to be an approved owner, and the answer is yes. There, I just for people to know on page 24. So you've got to pay $49 to become an approved owner, and then if you actually move, I think if you move, then you've got to pay another $27, which to me seems really high. Any comments about that?
The only comment would be that in terms of when you move, part of the process for becoming an approved owner is a site visit. So the inspectors have to go out and assess the property that you are having assessed to be an approved owner. So that's why there's an additional charge. It's not just about the owner themselves, it's also about the property and its appropriateness for having dogs.
Okay, thank you. So the next, I've got several questions on page 25. The Environmental Health Food Act 2014, is that actually such an act?
I would imagine so. Sorry, I'm not sure of the exact title. I would just trust
I looked. I suspect that might need amending. So then, in relation to, so you've got all the prices here in relation to, so you've got registration fees, and I suppose this is quite pertinent for what's going on in Waikanae at present. So this is why I looked at this here. So you've got a registration fee, which is $103, and then you've got a verification fee. So it's my understanding a verification fee is every now and again you've got to be audited to make sure that you're doing a decent job. And, you know, so these fees, are these actually fees set by the regulations, or are these fees set by council?
Sorry, I'm just having a look at them there. Just to go back to your previous question, it's the Food Act 2014, so it's Environmental Health Food Act 2014 is the fees that we're talking about. But I'm not 100% sure on, there's a mix of fees in there, so some of them are based on our hourly charge out rate and some of them are based on legislation. Apologies, I'm not 100% clear on which ones are which.
Yeah, okay, because I had a quick look, and as you will know, it's a bit of a minefield, but I looked at so you've got the Act and then you've got the regulations, and the regulations are a lot more prescriptive about what needs to happen, and in there's a schedule of fees, and some of these fees that the council is actually advertising here are actually higher than what they are in the regulations. So I'm just wondering whether it would be useful to, like for example here, Schedule 1 in relation to some of these things. Yeah, so basically it's about 130 odd for a lot of those points under the verification fees. And it also says there in sections 4 and 5 of the 2019 amendment that the council has got the ability to either waive or amend these fees. And so I know we've had a lot of conversations about this here, and I know, you know, like, so if you're a baker in a market, you know, you're going to have to pay, you know, what's here, $157 per hour, and on the website it gives an average of three and a quarter hours for them to be verified. That's an awful lot of money, and I'm just wondering, you know, whether that's actually, you know, whether that's going to stymie a lot of people. And, you know, I don't know. And is it actually council staff who does those verifications, or is it actually, it's outsourced? How does that actually happen?
It's our own environmental health staff who do those verifications.
Yeah, so
Councillor Bravno, are some of the questions they going to make any changes, or
well,
can this be clarified for you offline? That's
yeah, so I think
because we could be here all day.
25 if those fees were actually checked, please. And I think you might be lucky that might be the end of me. Oh yes, no, here we are. Hall charge is on page 35. So we've got the hall charges nicely laid out there. I see that the Waikanae Memorial Hall, the main hall charges $8.20 per hour. But then you have the Waikanae Community Centre, which is $46.50, and the Waikanae Beach Community Hall is $12.30. And when I look at, you know, the variance in the quality of those buildings, I cannot understand why the Waikanae Memorial Hall is so cheap in relation to those others. And if we looked at other locations, you might have a similar sort of issue. Plus, if I also may say that the Paraparaumu College Gymnasium Hall, during weekdays, which is school time, the rate is twice the price of what it is during the weekend. Some comments, please.
Good afternoon. It's Alison, and that should be me that can answer that question, but I actually don't know the answer to that specific one, I'm sorry, around why there is a range of those prices. With regard to the school gymnasium, I would presume it's because during the day it's used by the school, so that wouldn't be the rate that the school is using it at. That would be for outside of school use. But with regard to the Waikanae Halls question, sorry, I'd have to get back to you.
Yeah, so it'd be good for clarification. To me, it's something at Paraparaumu College, students using those halls, you want to encourage that. And to me, you want to have it as low as possible. So it'd be good to have a check on that one as well. So what else have we got? Sorry, I'm just having to scroll down. So we got here. Oh yes, on page 41, water meter accuracy testing, $392. I would have thought that that's actually, those water meters are actually council owned, and that's, it's in their interest to actually check to make sure that they're actually reading correctly. So hence I'm wondering why a charge is being put on possibly a user.
Would you like me to answer that, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, please.
Well, I'm waiting for somebody from the staff to answer this.
That's Sean.
Yes, good afternoon, councillors. So the charge is only recovered if the meter is found to not be under reading.
So if it's over reading, they get charged, is it?
No, if the meter's correct, if the meter's within its acceptable range, then we would look to charge. If there was a problem with it, then we would pay the cost of the test.
Okay, so how often, just for interest, are the meters calibrated?
They are calibrated at the time they're installed, and they generally, as they get older, they potentially underread or overread because they're mechanical meters. So we don't regularly calibrate them unless there's an issue in terms of the volume of water and a complaint raised by a resident.
Okay, thank you. That's me done. Thank you.
Well done, Councillor. I've got Angela Buswell, Martin Holiday, and Janet Holbrook.
Hi, I was just going to ask the question around the building consents being dropped for small buildings, but that's kind of been covered and it's a little bit out of scope for this discussion, so I'm all good to carry on.
Thank you. Councillor Holiday.
Hi there. Look, I've got about 5 things, but just quickly in regards to what Jocelyn was talking about, that should that be made clearer on that document that you aren't getting charged, the conditions that you are get charged versus what you don't get charged? Just saying. No? Yes? Could that
so are you referencing the water meters? I think
Yeah, it doesn't really actually make that very clear that if it's found to be faulty, that there's no charge.
Yeah, that information is, I have to check, but I think it's on the council website rather than in the document.
Stand corrected.
The other issue is I'm not aware of us actually doing, there's a simple way to test those meters that doesn't require them to be sent off to be bench test, which is what we generally do, which is a sort of bucket test in terms of volume. So it's very unusual, and I'm not aware of us actually having to do that test to date. But there is.
I'll just build on that one. Page 7, removal of overhanging trees and vegetation. Can I just get that clarified? The cost for that, is that just an on-charge type situation? Is it quoted for or anything like that?
Yes, there would generally be a discussion in advance looking at what the estimated cost might be, and it's to recover the cost if a resident isn't prepared to do the physical works themselves.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. Page 32, pool 32 is the fees for pools. I note that you have the age at 16 years. I don't know if this is the right medium for this, but I'm curious to know why it's not at 18 years old, because for argument's sake, usually the people that are 16 to 18 and not a student, one would assume they're either in a low-paying job or no job at all, or on a limited income.
Thank you, Councillor Holiday. The reason for the age is typical of across the country. So we've kept it in line with other pool. Once they're 16, they can be responsible for other children and things as well. So it's just to keep in line with what's happening around the country.
I mean, I just look at it from a cost perspective more than anything else. I'd almost find that a bit prohibitive for a person rather than encouraging them to use the pool.
And so the student fee was brought in a couple of years ago to acknowledge that as well.
More falling into people that aren't students. The other thing was back to the hall hire charges. That's on page 35. I'm just curious, the rates there don't have a day charge as such. So you've got per hour charge rate for 4 hours or more booking. What's the story if someone hires the place for a day, like as in sort of, or even multiple days? Is there a limit to the amount of hours they get charged for? Do we have a day rate as such?
From memory, we do, but I would just need to double check that for you. I'm sorry.
Would it be fair to perhaps include that in this price scheduling, or is that also in the actual documents as well?
I'll double check and come back to you.
Okay, that's great. And I'm just curious, there's not much of a rate change between difference between standard rate and also not a non-for-profit or community groups. We've got a per hour rate there, but we don't seem to have one that's sort of separate for the community as such versus, say, commercial use or private use. We seem to have had that in other fees in relation to hires. No real reason for that?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure. I guess going forward, if that was something that we wanted to consider, we could look at it in the next review of fees and charges.
Oh, okay. So when would be the appropriate time for me to address that?
So that would be for the next financial year when we start looking at charges.
That's all right. I can make a note of that. My last question on page 36, I just needed some clarification. For loans and services, there's a charge there. This is on page 36, library fees of interloans and international interloans being $15 and $35 each. Just seems like a really high price, but I don't understand what an interloan is. Can someone clarify that?
I'm presuming it's between different libraries, but again, I would need to check. Sorry, I'm not familiar with all the individual prices.
All right, that's it for me.
Thank you, Michael. Martin. Janet Holbrook.
Yeah, thank you. It's just a question about process rent. I think it just got answered. So we've had some numerous suggestions and concerns raised by councillors couple of councillors today. So what happens now? How do they get addressed? Are they going to roll into the next long-term plan process? Because I thought this report was pretty much just moving the exceptions outlined in the paper, and that we had agreed to press on with the fees and charges identified in the long-term plan as part of our scaled back consultation process this round. So could somebody just clarify that for me, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor. I can clarify that for you. So look, typically what we're trying to achieve today is that you do approve the fees and charges as per this paper. You may wish not to, in which case we would need to make those changes and you approve those changes today, or we work up those changes and bring them back to you in June, and those changes are included in the final annual plan that you adopt for 2021 on the 25th of June. So so the options are you request changes today, but that's probably not realistic to be worked through. The second option is you give officers a clear steer on what you want reworked, and we bring that back for your consideration on the 25th of June, and that's adopted as the final plan. Or that work does get continued into the long-term plan. Just a reminder that apart from those exceptions, Councillor, we are seeking your approval to the exceptions in paragraph 7. You're absolutely correct on that, as everything else is status quo and is in line with the fees and charges that the council approved for the current financial year. But just a reminder that for every fee or charge that you reduce, you're increasing rates. So, you know, just wanted to be clear, fees and charges offset the amount of rates revenue that we require. So if collectively you decide us to revise the fees and charges downwards, that will have an impact of increasing rates.
Thank you. So you've given us some clear options there. Thanks.
Councillor Coates.
Thank you. Sorry, I keep getting muted. Thank you, Mark. Look, it's partly what I wanted to touch on. Two things. The decision to not increase fees and charges for the next financial year and our response to the COVID-19 situation has a financial cost on the council. Could you clarify that cost so that we're all aware of that, again, if you have that information with you? And I hate to use the word revenue, but it's essentially lost revenue.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor. So in our report to Council on the 30th of April, we tabled the financial implications of this option, which was to, you know, with the exception of exceptions, to flatline the fees and charges. And the impact that had was it's reduced rates by $240,000. So by not increasing the fees and charges by inflation, or for step changes that officers identified through the workshops, we've effectively been able to remove $240,000 from the rates revenue requirement, which is 0.03%.
Thank you. And in regards to the questions that have been raised about the fees and charges in the paper today, we have been briefed on these fees and charges in briefings where we could provide feedback. Is that correct? I recall we raised the fee on outdoor dining, for example, and had a bit of a discussion and debate around that.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor. Yes, absolutely. We had a public workshop in which we went through the fees and charges. We outlined the pressures on those fees and charges. We took you through examples. So there has been, you know, I do appreciate that there's lots of fees and charges that the council administer. we have had a lot of discussion on that. So we certainly did table all those with you in those public workshops. And again, in the briefings, we tabled our recommendations to claw back on increases to fees and charges.
Thank you, Mark. Guru, I can see there's one further hand up. If there's no further questions after that, I'm happy to move the recommendations.
Yeah, can I just add, I think the message that's come out is, so we've gone through a fairly robust process. We've cut back on our revenue, and this is not the time to relitigate those issues. We need to get on with it. Jocelyn Prabham.
Thank you again. So, I'm quite happy, with the exception list that's been proposed there. But I suppose with, particularly with the Food Act charges and the haul hire charges, it's about understanding why there's potentially some anomalies there between the council numbers and, the regulations, and also anomalies within various halls, and I think it's about fairness.
So, are you asking a question? Or are you debating this?
Yes. So what I'm saying is, I would like those, like council staff to spend a little bit of time on checking to see, if they are actually an accurate reflection of what they should be, and for the rest of the paper, I'm fine with it.
Okay. So, Janet Holbrook.
So.
Yeah, I'm happy to second the motion. I had a comment around how I wanted the process to go forward, but I was saving that for debate. So maybe we could take those comments from Jocelyn and kind of shove them forward into debate, and maybe we can have a discussion about a way forward. That'll be good. And in the meantime, I'm happy to second the recommendation.
So recommendation 20 to 23 moved by Councillor Coates, seconded by Councillor Holbrook. Open for debate. Janet Holbrook.
Well, Councillor Coates moved the recommendation. Maybe he should have the opening remarks.
Councillor Coates.
Thank you, Councillor Holbrook. I did wish to have an opening statement. So look, it's been a long day and I don't really want to dwell any further on this, other than to say that we've had ample opportunities as a council in briefings to consider fees and charges. To start debating changing fees and charges at this late in the piece, at a time we should be approving these fees and charges, I don't think is fair to staff, and I don't think it's helpful. I appreciate the intention behind it, and I know that councillors that have raised it, have got some questions around fairness and so forth, but the time to raise that was in the briefings. It gives the staff an opportunity to work out what the impact of, say, reducing haul hire or reducing swimming fees has on that particular budget or that particular activity. I would encourage councillors that raise those just to park those thoughts and then bring them into this discussion for the future fees and charges thing. I don't think, I guess to Councillor Provanov's comment about the one point that she wasn't so happy about, we can't move all these today and have staff do some work on that one particular one. We either move the fees and charges today as presented, or we don't, or we follow one of the other options put forward by Mr. De Haast.
Jackie Elliott. Can't hear you.
I think, Jackie, you being offered an unmute option? Because I'm unmuted. Do you mind if I go next?
Hold on. Jackie, can you get through? No. Jocelyn.
I can't unmute myself.
And I did defer to James to have the opening remarks, so I didn't have my remarks yet. But I'll wait.
Holbrook.
I'll wait.
Hold on. Janet Holbrook.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to agree with what Councillor Cook has said. I think going through a big process to make some minor changes to the fees and charges at this stage would be disproportionate in terms of benefit with the amount of work and that would be required. I would say that we'd probably need a briefing in between maybe to make sure that we all agree. Otherwise, we're in for a protracted discussion today, and potentially with an outcome that hasn't been very well considered. So I'm of a mind to move this report today with the exceptions, which we've discussed already, and bring some of those concerns into the next long-term plan. That would be the most appropriate course of action. So I believe what Councillor Coutts and I have moved today is to accept the report in its entirety, and I would like to stick with that. Thank you.
Jocelyn.
Mr. Mayor, we had Councillor Elliott.
So
she doesn't show up. So you've got Councillor Elliott and then Jocelyn Brabno.
Look, I just wanted to say.
And General Holbrook, you seem to be, your hand's still up. Okay.
Can I speak?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Look, I'm totally in support of this paper as it is. I just wanted to mention the changes to the Building Act. That would normally come under the scope of the sort of legislation that we as a council are asked to submit on, and I am concerned that it may propose, for instance, our staff going and doing a full schedule of checks during the building process and then not being remunerated for it, you know, if there's no ongoing charge to the user. So I'm wondering if staff could possibly make a copy of the proposal at government to us. I'd be really interested to see what the fine print is. Thank you.
Jocelyn. Jocelyn, are you there? No?
Sorry, I have to keep on flicking between the screen and the document. So there's actually 4 recommendations to be made, and I'm not sure whether all 4 have been moved. It was just been one.
No, all 4 moved by Councillor Coutts and seconded by Holbrook.
So, you know, for the sake of expediency, I'm happy to, you know, to support all of these too, but you know, I would like these other points to be looked at. So, you know, I certainly agree that we've had briefings around there, but there's so many numbers thrown at us, and to go through line by line, it's actually really difficult. But when you have it laid out in more of a summary, it's actually far easier to compare and to look at what numbers are there. So, you know, the way it's been laid out today, I've actually found quite helpful, and maybe that's how I've picked up these matters.
Okay, lessons learned.
Yeah, thank you.
Mark, do you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. So officers have committed to have a look at the Environmental Food Act 2014 section, just to have another review of that. We've also committed to, we've heard Alison acknowledge the queries raised on hall hires. So in terms of the actions that we take away, is that we'll certainly look at those 2 parts. And I highlighted that there was an error in the footer of that of our fees and charges schedule, which would go onto the council website. It has been a long day, and I do apologise. I just want to clarify that increasing the fees and charges, effectively the impact that had is it increased the rates revenue by 240,000. So fees and charges, you did increase the rates revenue by $240,000. That's the first point. The second point is if each and every time you reduce the fees and charges that are before you today, all you're doing is adding to the rates requirement. So apologies if I confused anyone on that and wasn't clear.
Okay, that's helpful. Councillor Randall.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to support Councillor Pravano, and I believe she deserves clarification on the fact that if there is a difference between the regulation fees and the bylaw fees, my understanding is the regulation fees must take precedent. So maybe the staff can just confirm with Councillor Provenant that the regulations fees do supersede or are equal to the bylaw fees.
So you can come back to her on that one.
Not to me, to Councillor Pravano.
Well, I mean, this coming back to all the councils, because all the council will have an interest in it.
Yeah. Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we'll clarify that.
Okay. So look, the recommendations 20 to 23 moved by Councillor Coates, seconded by Councillor Holbrook. Can you press your button, yes or no?
We have 9 votes yes, 10 votes yes, and we're just waiting on one more. Or do we have an abstention?
Has anybody abstained?
I can't see any. Oh, yep, 11 votes yes.
Okay, carried. Thank you very much for that. We're now on item 8.2, the Kapiti Gateway, page 43. Who's the reporting officers on this? Darren Grant and who else?
Mr. Mayor, I'm just going to make a comment to start, if you recall.
Yeah, I'm sorry. The Chief Executive did signal me that he wanted to have a quick word with all of us. I know for a start that since last year, April 2018, we have had 12 briefings in this area, including in reference to the PGF funding and the gateway. The new councillors coming in have had 6 briefings so far. So we've done a lot of work on this. Staff have been working hard on this. Anyway, on to you, the Chief Executive.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, just before the staff go through, I think we need to make sure is a brief presentation and introduction to the paper. I think something seems to have got a little bit lost in translation through this process. In those briefings, you've been advised that, yes, it's a somewhat compromised process in order to try and fit within PGF timeframes. So everybody agrees that that's not ideal. That said, we have continued to operate under the mandate that we do want to try and access that funding to make the most of it while it's available. That window is closing. So what we've put in front of you is absolutely the costed up designs that you have been briefed on. There isn't a business case that has been completed and put in front of you. A lot of the questions and comments have been about whether it's feasible or not. Well, we're not there yet. So in introducing this to you today, what we're really saying is we either take the opportunity to apply to the PGF and see where we get, or we don't. It's pretty simple, really. If we don't, as I've said to you before, we will park it until some future date when there might be an opportunity to revisit it. If we do go ahead, that is an application to the fund, and then we will wait and see whether the fund agrees to provide their share. You will still have the opportunity to complete the process of deciding whether the building is feasible, both to build and to operate. So we haven't done that work, it is not complete, it has not been through its processes, and that is why you're having to make a decision where some of you feel it's a little bit grey, and that makes the decision making difficult. But as I've said to you, I'm only moderately confident, given COVID, that the PGF still will agree to fund this. In recent weeks, they have funded 1 or 2 projects of a similar ilk. You've heard, I hope, quite clearly that this is the last chance. It will close. The election shutdown is in about mid-June anyway, but the funds have all been diverted to COVID response now. The control is still in your hands beyond this point, in that if we take an optimistic view that the PGF says yes to their share, that does not mean we have to spend it. We can give it back, and we would, if this project was not feasible when we've completed the rest of the work. For reference, if you look through the media, you'll see that just recently Dunedin City Council are giving back $19.9 million for their waterfront development, because they can't complete it in this environment. They can't make their own contribution. So you still have that opportunity. I guess what I'm trying to make very, very clear is it's in your hands today as to whether we seek that opportunity for PGF funding or not. That's simply the decision. In making it, you're not going to be making a decision about the viability of the ongoing operation. We'll bring that to you as and when we can. There's more work to be done in detailed design. Yes, it's an imperfect process. We have to have it consent ready in order to apply. But I acknowledge that there's every chance further changes will need to be made before we finalise the design, even assuming that it's funded. So I hope that's pretty clear. I'll hand over to Darren and the team to run through a bit of a background and an intro, and then I guess we'll take questions. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Executive. That was very clear, and it's a very simple process, really. We look at it within that framework. Darren.
It's actually with me, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, to start with. So kia ora koutou, everyone. We heard again today, the Gateway's been talked about for over 20 years, and there's long been a desire to promote and enhance Kapiti Island as a tourist activity and to provide a focus on the Kapiti coast as a tourist destination, and in order to drive the further economic benefit to the broader community. In 2013, there was a feasibility study undertaken by TRC, but those recommendations did not go any further. During consultation for the Maclean Park Management and Development Plan, a number of submissions came through in support of a gateway facility in the park. As part of that process, the project area that was identified in the development plan for a possible future gateway was the northern end of the park, including the south side of the Tukutu stream. And as a result of the 2019 feasibility study undertaken by TRC, this is where the proposed gateway building would be located. As has been acknowledged, we have been working under a pressured time frame in order to make the most of the opportunity that is provided by the PGF. The time frame's been short from the start. PGF have said that there's a limited window and we need to meet their criteria to have any chance of success. They've already given us more time to submit an application. There has been considerable work undertaken with multiple stakeholders, including key community representatives. It did take time from the start to get those stakeholders around the table to discuss the way forward. The feasibility study undertaken late last year involved our iwi partners, key stakeholders and community representatives throughout the process. The important part of the feasibility study was that it provided a platform to move forward from, as there was general agreement about the location and functions of the gateway from the partners and stakeholders involved. As already discussed, we have needed to move at pace over recent months in order to meet the requirements for the application, including a concept building design. And I really want to emphasise that it is a concept building design, and to have an accepted resource consent. The detailed design for the building would only begin once a successful PGF application has been confirmed. And I'd just really like to assure you that there would be complete partner and stakeholder involvement throughout the process of the detailed design stage, and there will be opportunities to socialise the design with the wider community. As Wayne has said, we acknowledge there's still details to work through, but we are losing the window to make the most of the opportunity that's provided by the PGF. We don't know what funding, if any, would be available after the election, and in addition, there has been a reallocation of funds within the PGF to respond to COVID, and possibly further reallocation for the Crown infrastructure projects. So now I am just going to hand over to Janice Hill, who has been leading the project over the last few months to get us to the stage that we are now, and she'll just speak to some of the key points that have been raised through the report.
Thanks, Alison. Okay, so a very short summary of points. The design brief was drawn together from the consultation with stakeholders as part of the feasibility report and the submissions to McLean Park Plan, as Alison has just stated. These were then tested and confirmed with users such as the operators, and they were drawn together into a design brief, which then informed the architects who used it to develop the concept designs, and it was also used again in order to evaluate the designs against them. So you have heard them before. In a quick summary, they involved the coastal site, including the no-build setbacks from the dunes and stream, the fact that it's a public site and the need to factor in crime prevention through environmental design, the ecology, the fragile dune environment, the cultural values and the significance of the site to mana whenua, the visitor needs, not just Kapiti Island visitors, including park visitors and regional visitors, the biosecurity requirements, a best practice build, including relocatable stormwater treatment, rainwater materials used, the tour operators' needs, and future-proofing it so that it could be expanded in future. And the design requirements also ensured compliance with the district plan. Independent architects have told us that it's a very good piece of design, and the design is also supported by the iwi representatives. You've heard from them today. Again, stressing that it is only a preliminary design. To develop the design, we need to and we will engage with users, community, stakeholders, and elected members. Such things that need to be confirmed yet are the interior layout, the need, using the needs of the different users, visitors to the island, the region, the tour operators, community groups, schools potentially using it as outdoor classrooms, etc. The exact sizes of the spaces required, the materials, including sourcing culturally appropriate materials, the stories that are going to be celebrated, how they will be brought to life, the interpretive information and the technology used to make them engaging, the operational model, including staffing requirements. The developed design will also assist to confirm the operational model, and that process will start if funding is secured. So it's intended that the gateway will increase visitors to Kapiti Island and provide flow-on economic benefits for the region. You've already heard that Kapiti Island is a destination trip. It's a highly unique and sought-after natural experience, and that was confirmed by our recent visitor survey. It brings people to the region. 80% of Kapiti Island trip visitors are from outside of the Kapiti region, and 40% of those also stay overnight. 70% of Kapiti Island trip visitors are domestic. And you've already heard from John and David this morning that domestic tourism is set to increase, especially whilst our borders are closed. The Gateway will improve the visitor experience with a great pre-trip educational experience. It will be a platform and a focus for increasing awareness and promotion, and will inspire more people to visit the island. Visitor numbers to Kapiti Island have been rapidly increasing. Between 2015 and 2019, numbers increased by 248%. That's a 5-year period, they increased by 248%. We have based the economic growth numbers on a 300% growth. Yes, sounds optimistic, but that's over 10 years. We tested the product development ideas with visitors using the survey, and there was strong interest, including such options that don't even involve landing on the island, such as using the waters and the nature around the island. The flow-on effects to the region of increasing visitors to Kapiti Island will create ongoing employment for Kapiti's people, not just in tourism, but in other sectors too, including hospitality and retail. Plus, in the short term, this will create a construction opportunity and an ability to provide jobs for those who may have been impacted by the predicted private sector drop in investment. And finally, there are benefits for the wider community, much wider than Kapiti Island. The Gateway will improve the awareness of activities, events and experiences across the district, including our natural reserves, walks, resources, museums and commercial activities. It will provide opportunities for young people as the Gateway becomes an outdoor classroom and source of inquiry for education. It also will provide opportunities to connect us with our Tūranga Waiwai, to learn our local history and the significance of our place. It's an opportunity for art, culture, nature and conservation to be showcased. And in summary, it will be a versatile, multi-purpose community space which adds to the Parapirima Beach experience. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Janice. Look, this is how I'm going to manage this as chair. The portfolio holder for business and jobs, Angela Buswell, has signaled to me that she wants to move the resolutions. But before that, you know, we're now in question time, ask your questions. Following that, when Angela is ready to move with the seconder, debate time, I'm just going to go one chance for each of the councillors, a robin round, to say your speech. You can take as long as you like. And then back to Angela for right of reply, and then we'll go straight to vote. I think that makes it very simple. So it's now question time. Ask your questions. I've got Rob McCann first, Bernie Randall, then James Coates.
Kia ora, thank you very much. And I do recognise that we have seen various presentations over some period. One of my major concerns, and I think it's echoed around the community and by some councillors, is the consultation in the process. And we must be cognizant of COVID-19. But how do you consider that moving forward, if we're greenlighting what our CE said, which is putting an application in, not necessarily going ahead with the project, how do you consider that you're going to undertake consultations so that we can ensure that the community does back this project?
Thank you, Councillor McCann. I guess first of all, I would like to acknowledge that, as we've said, due to the time constraints that we've had, that we haven't undertaken consultation as we perhaps would have otherwise, and also with the COVID restrictions. Speaking for everyone involved in the project, I mean, obviously we need to have buy-in from the community to be able to proceed this further. The detailed design will work with those key people that want to be involved in the building going forward, the potential users, commercial operators, and key community representatives. I think there is a limit on how wide we can spread it out to the community as far as actually finalising a design. It would be very hard to design a building with wide-ranging community, but we obviously also want to hear from the community about what they want to see. So I guess in short, we don't have a detailed communications plan, but the absolute outcome for us would be that we're involving the necessary people along the way. Community board and elected members would certainly have a role to play with helping us getting the word out. We could do things like drop-in sessions, use our usual media channels, invite feedback. But the key thing is to make sure the people that are going to be using the building, and we need the outcomes from the building to be right, working with them very closely through the detailed design.
Thank you for that. I'm sure other councillors might have something to add about potential consultation solutions moving forward. But a second question I have is, it's been raised by a number of councillors that the business plan is particularly optimistic. Will we be able to have, and that doesn't necessarily mean that something being too optimistic should be canned, but will we have another opportunity to have that business plan reinvestigated over the next short while to ensure that what we're putting money into will not become an ongoing cost for our council?
Yes, so the business plan is still under development. There's some key things that need to be in there. We would be able to bring that back by way of briefing and update to the council to show where we've landed with that and the key assumptions that have been made and projections going forward.
And the only other question I have, and this is probably out of, I'm sure the Mayor will tell me it's out of brief, but is the absolute need for this project to be connected with our business plan within the region and our advertising and marketing plan. But I'll be quiet now.
Who's going to respond to that?
That was a comment, not a question, Mr.
Yes. Look, I want to raise a question to the Chief Executive. This, when you make an application as a PGF, there's a development unit that scrutinizes it. In your view, do you think that the rigor that will be applied to this application, given the huge, hundreds and hundreds of applications they go through, that they will razor blade this application thoroughly? This is not a Boy Scout experience. That this is going to be a thorough scrutiny of the plans. And you yourself have said that you're not fully confident they will go through that. From your understanding of the process, how thorough are they?
Right. So, yes, Mr. Mayor, I think there's multiple ways you'd interpret it. They are obviously very busy right now, dealing with all sorts of applications that have come forward through the shovel-ready projects. So I can't say whether or not that will impact on how robustly they look over any single application. But I guess the limited experience we have had with successful applications for organisations in the district tells me that they have been what I would call fairly thorough in their evaluation. And that includes some that have been successful and some that haven't been successful. So I haven't been on the inside looking at how they do it, but yes, I'm comfortable that it's as robust as processes around this sort of thing are. And they would always acknowledge the same as has been discussed, that there's no certainty about forecasts and numbers, but they will look at the quality of the work that's been done behind it. And essentially, if a project is consentable, if a consent has been lodged, then that gives them comfort over that part of the process. That it's not just a pipe dream with some lines drawn on a piece of paper. It has been progressed to a stage where a consent application can be made. So by relying on those sorts of processes, they can give themselves some comfort that it's robust enough in that element. We're live streaming, so I won't talk about whether I think there is any political interference or influence on applications that have been successful around the country. I'll leave that to your imaginations. But I would say that if we do put forward an application, and I think I've said this before about things, this is always a great opportunity for us to advocate in support of our projects. What we have heard is a very clear message from them that they would look sideways or even not positively at a project if there was clear evidence that there wasn't support. So ultimately, if our community and our council can't agree on it, I think that would have a negative impact on the project. If our community and our council can say, we understand the constraints with where we're at right now and we need to work through those, but it's good enough to apply, I think they would look positively at it. The reasons why I'm not sure about funding is simply because the Crown Infrastructure shovel-ready projects of under 20 million, as we know, there was $136 billion worth of applications. So I don't know how many billions have been put forward to that fund, nor how much they're going to. So that's the bit that gives me pause at this stage for its likelihood of success.
Very good. Councillor Rendell.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, it's a procedural motion, and that's a procedural point regarding your statement that you, as the Mayor, want Councillor Buswell to move the motion. Surely, under standing orders, it's open to any councillor to move it, rather than you predetermining a particular councillor to move a motion. That's all.
It wasn't a predetermination in the sense that the request was made because of the portfolio she holds. We have done that before on housing issues. The Rob McCann signal he wants to move that. Councillor Coates has moved similar interest in motions of this sort. So it's just exercising the portfolio holders, which we all agree that they are the portfolio holders in this area. That's all it is. And of course, she still has got to find a seconder. But I'm just signaling that that's where it is. Councillor James Coates.
Thank you, Guru, and for the staff for the presentation and the work that's been put into this. I've got a number of questions, and I guess not playing to the public via live stream, although I don't think the whole community is probably watching, did send through 12 or so questions via email. Purely, look, it's 2:30 today, and we're not even fully through our meeting, so just in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through all those questions, but I do have a few that have led out of today's discussion in the public speakers. It has been noted around concerns around archaeological finds. I'm just curious as to the risks around that. My initial thoughts is risk to the time frame. I don't see that as a big issue given the COVID stuff, but I am concerned if there are issues to the project in general. Is someone available to respond to that?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Councillor Coates, and I was expecting that question after the conversation this morning. So what's being brought forward this morning, it's not anything that is unusual in any construction sites, and we'd have the necessary processes in place for that. But prior to this, we have already had an archaeological assessment done for the McLean Park development, so we are quite aware of the situation that's there. That didn't highlight any risks, but we also are having a further cultural impact assessment undertaken. We're obviously working really closely with iwi through the process, and then when construction, or if construction does start, we would have the necessary protocols in place.
Thank you. And look, you and others may not be placed to answer this question, and I hope it's not insensitive to ask it. But if there was a significant find there, and I'm thinking Rotorua, hidden villages scenario, is that something that could be used as an opportunity to again highlight the very points that were raised this morning around the history and the culture in the district?
Absolutely, but I think what you've picked up on around the stories is actually a really key point, and that's something that we'd really want to take further throughout the facility design and when it's up and running as well. But I don't like to speak on behalf of iwi, and I feel like I might be getting into dangerous territory with that a little bit. With the work that we have already undertaken in McLean Park, the view generally was that the area is already highly modified. So significant works were undertaken back in the 40s and 50s to create what was there. So potentially there's low risk for further work.
Thank you. There's been a lot of discussion around the cost per square metre for the facility, and I know there's been conflicting comments around the square metre which is the total site rather than the building itself. Look, I'm not a builder, but there's been figures bandied around about $8,500 a square metre, and it is hard from an uneducated perspective to consider that in relation to other building costs. Could someone please speak to, I guess, the true building costs, and if they are high, why they are high?
Yes, thank you. I can. I think where it's come from is their overall budget of 4.46 purely being divided by the square metres of the building, and that's ended up with that high square metre rate. It's important to look at the breakdown. So a large proportion of the cost is for external work. So 1.25 million is for the new bridge, covered deck, or things such as the bridge, the decking, the landscaping, the car park, and the carved pole. And then there's a further contingency allowance that comes up to $1 million. So we're looking at 2.25 million just in external works and contingency. So when you break it down for the cost of construction for the actual building, at a high level it works out at 6,500 per square metres, but that still isn't completely reflective of the actual cost of construction. So that's the fixtures and fittings, site preparation. There's a large roof area that goes over the deck. So we're not talking about just a standard build that I've seen it's been compared to. There's a significant amount of external works. the things such as the interpretive panels. There's a whole lot of additional things that have come into this building, and then obviously also the large amount of contingency, at a much higher amount of contingency than we would normally have for a construction project, because we've built in the unknown factor with COVID.
And so following on from that, being removable, did that add extra costs to the build compared to a standard build?
Not that I'm aware of. I know that some of the other designs it was more expensive to be not removable when we looked at how it worked out.
Thank you. The consent application, it's been raised. I put a question to Sharon Hunter, and her reply was that, you know, once the consent's lodged, it's very difficult to change that. What I'm concerned about is if we proceed and through the further work that we do, we decide that the building doesn't need to be quite so big. If I heard our Chief Executive correctly, or it might have been Janice, it doesn't mean that we can't go back and review that design. I'm not suggesting that we would or we'd want to. I'm just, you know, if the feedback comes back or the business case comes back that we need to, is that a possibility?
Yes, absolutely, it's a possibility. So again, like it is a concept design because we needed to put something forward to have an accepted resource consent to go with the application. But on saying it's a possibility, it is. I'd like to say anything is. There's some things that, like the site size and the area and the location with where it is with regard to the stream and the dune and the no build line and things like that, they're dictated by the district plan. So there's some things that probably we wouldn't be able to change, but as far as the building,
sure.
The flow and how it's set out and things like that, yes.
So that leads to my next question. Was there any risks identified with a much smaller building, or, you know, why was the rationale, or was there a rationale for the size that it is, as opposed to, as some of the feedback that we've had even from speakers today, a much smaller building? It might be a question for Janice.
Yeah. I can probably partly answer that as well, because during McLean Park development plan, we did actually explore different options then. You may remember in the 3 options that range from having one sort of bus shelter through to an in-between platform for people to get on and off the boats with toilet through to a gateway building. And that smaller bus shelter side option was not one that was particularly liked through that process. And I guess the other point I'd like to make is a smaller building you'd presume would be mainly for a biodiversity function, whereas we're talking much wider than that. We're talking about having the visitor and discovery centre that provides that wider benefit focal point to the community and to the coast, to encourage tourism and economic flow on moving forward, which is why it's more than just that small building that would only be for biosecurity.
I could probably add to that, and that is that we didn't prescribe a size for the architects. We prescribed needs and requirements, and all the architects came back with a very similar sort of building size based on those, like the boats each hold 30 people and things like that need to be processed. So we described functional requirements and the budget or indicative budget, and so the size was determined, and the different concepts had different ways of solving that. So for example, this one has a lot of the interpretive information outside, whereas if you go right back to that TRC feasibility, they described a much bigger building, but that was a much more old-fashioned way of putting a huge building and all the interpretation inside it. This one is much more of a public space.
Thank you, Janice. I've got 2 more brief questions. We've heard from both of the operators today, and the concerns that I got out of hearing from one of the operators was that the pressure that the facility could put on the operator's model, you know, for example, their operating costs. I'm a business owner myself, and I understand that if you've got a tight budget and additional costs that you don't necessarily wish to or want to incur, that you know, can be quite challenging. So how do we mitigate that, or how do we take that feedback on board? Do the staff share the same concerns?
So the operating model hasn't been set yet. So that is still to be worked through with both operators. So the proposal that's been put forward is that there is no cost to be imposed on the operators at all. What's being suggested is a per user fee, but not a fee for the operators to use the facility at all.
Thank you. The last question was around the forecasted revenue, and I've got a comment, but I'll keep that to debate. Obviously, I submitted a question and I had concerns around the revenue, and I should add that the Chief Executive provided me some reassurance around the business case that's still being produced. Will we expect to see more detailed revenue in that business case? And if I could clarify, I don't need to know the price of a hat and how many hats they're going to sell and what the margin is. It's just more the units or item lines within the revenue to understand where the numbers are coming from. Numbers of visitors, how many days, and so forth. Is that what councillors can expect if we go through to the next stage?
Yep, so the business case will explore that further, and I'd like to think that we would be able to give more specific examples of the kind of revenue that could be generated. There are some ideas around the use of the commercial space and other opportunity for future growth, so we'd be able to go into more detail once we have that thought through and in a position that we can describe it well to you.
Okay, thanks. I don't have any further questions. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Wim Compton.
Cool, thank you very much. In the PGF application process, it explicitly asks about whether public consultation has been undertaken. How are we planning to answer that question? Are we planning to say no, it hasn't, and substitute in the stakeholder consultation for that? And if so, are we going to note that there hasn't yet been any wider public consultation?
Thank you, Councillor Compton. I guess we're of the view that there has been an amount of community consultation through the McLean Park Management Plan over an 18-month period. There was substantial feedback through that around the wider park and the gateway and the location of a gateway. We've worked significantly over the last 18 months with the key stakeholders who also represent a wide part of our community through the Boating Club, the Dive Club, Coast Guard, and the operators that are based at McLean Park. The Beach Business Retailers Association has been representative. There's been other groups that have been involved through the advisory group, and the TRC feasibility study spent a lot of time working with those key representatives of the community. And I guess I liken it to the purpose of the elected members' role as having a voice for the community. We were relying on those key community representatives to be able to bring the views of the wider community that they represent into the project.
I guess for me, there's a key difference between talking to stakeholders and talking to the wider public about a specific building plan going in that's separate. It's part of the overall McLean Park plan, but it is a specific building of a $4.4 million building. It's a significant thing, and I mean, as it stands, there hasn't been public consultation on the specific building that's going to the PGF. I take your point that people said they wanted something at that end, but this design itself hasn't gone to public consultation. Assuming this goes ahead today and the PGF provides funding and we greenlight it after that, when would the first sod be turned on this, and when would the gateway actually open up for visitors?
So one of the criteria of the PGF is that we would be ready within 6 months to start construction within 6 months. So depending on timing of when the application was confirmed as being successful, confirming the resource consent. So ideally we'd be able to start construction by the end of this year, 12 to 18 month construction time. So open in 2022. Which should be around a good timing for really being able to get back with the tourism being up and running over the next 12 to 18 months, and hopefully those international visitors being able to come back into our borders.
Cool. Thank you.
Councillor Holbrook.
Thank you. Actually, most of my questions have been asked by Councillor Coots already. I was crossing them off as I went. So my first question is, we're applying for half of the funding through the PGF. Would there be anything, and one of the concerns with the community is the scale of our contribution, something just over 2 million. Would there be anything stopping us from applying for other funding to cover some of that, our half of the cost, other government funding or any other funding?
I can answer that one, Janet. No, there's nothing stopping us from, so what we're putting up is actually the 50% would be our worst case scenario, that there are a number of other funds and things like lotteries that could definitely help offset council's contribution.
Thank you. And we've talked about, I've been quite reassured so far about the fact that we can look at the business model. I'm thinking in terms of the overall operational model, could that be revisited later? Could it be run by, say, a trust or a CCO like Zealandia? Or once we've applied for the PGF, are we committed to it being a council-run facility into the future?
So that is, sorry, you go, Alison.
So the operating model is one of the things that we're working through. So what's being drafted in the report is the assumption at the moment about how it would operate, but the operating model still needs to be defined through the business case process.
Thank you. The one of the concerns that was brought up by the operators is that they would be compromised, and Councillor Coots mentioned this, they would be compromised by the user pays that might be applied to the biosecurity check-in facilities. Would there be anything stopping operators from making alternative arrangements if they decided not to use the facility? Say any other operators came into the district, would they be beholden to use this facility, or might they choose, and could they even in fact choose to continue as they're operating at the moment? Or would the expectation be that every operator uses this facility?
So council's expectation isn't that would be the case. Their relationship with DOC is what states what requirements are around biosecurity. So it would only be if DOC proposed to change the requirement to say that they had to use a specific facility.
Thank you. Regarding one of the results which I questioned in the community ad hoc community consultation that's been carried out by a local business owner, have we had our own conversations with local business owners as to whether it's their perception that a facility like this would improve their revenue? Have we had any of our own conversations around that, and is that something that we could look into still going forward?
So the survey that we undertook was with people who travelled to the island in the last 18 months. So that was truly a visitor survey, and we had a sample size of over 2,000. It was fairly substantial. We haven't done any, to my knowledge, any specific business survey, but that was certainly something that could be looked at.
Yes, I think that'd be great.
Can I just add something in terms of the consultation through the TRC report? You know, we had the Beach Association as part of that, and they were very keen to see, you know, that connection because of the benefit, and that was part of the design to make sure there was no competing activities with the shops, so that the activities were complementary, not competing.
Great, thank you.
And that was taken into the design requirements as well.
Fantastic. So last question, it's just to follow on from Councillor Compton's question about consultation. The requirement for the PGF for consultation, I just want clarity there. Is that necessarily a full-blown community consultation on a specific design that they require? Or is the kind of consultation that we have done covered within what they expect and what their requirements are?
So I've read through the PGF application several times, and there is a draft one, and there's nothing in there that says they need to see any standard of consultation. What they want to see is a project that is supported by the community, but they haven't specified.
And that's something that we could work on after we make this decision today. That's something we could still be doing to strengthen our application.
You also refer back to Alison's answer to Councillor Compton on that.
Great.
I think the fact that iwi have been involved in this process is crucial, and so I think the fact that iwi are supportive of it is crucial for PGF. Also, the fact that key partners or stakeholders have been engaged with through the process is crucial as well.
Great. That's me. Thank you.
Councillor Holiday.
Thank you very much. Can I just get a quick bit of clarity there through you, Meguru? Are we just doing questions at the moment and then moving to debate after this, or just that one shot? Sorry?
Your questions.
Just questions. Okay. Can I please ask, number 7 refers to the financial, or the $5.91 million that's supposed to be coming from this. Is that figure what we are currently earning? And the $5.91 million is what's forecast to be earned after the space is open?
We are earning a baseline number, but it's nowhere near that number. It's something in the order of half of it, I believe. It was contained in the economic impact report, but I don't have that right in front of me. So no, that number is a combination of the operation of the gateway itself, plus the additional benefits that would accrue by the end of year 1. So no, the answer is no, it is not a baseline.
Okay. We've been talking about consenting, and it's fairly ambiguous. So I just want to know how, once the consent's gone in, if we go through with this, how far back can we pull the plan? Can we pull it right back to square one and redo it all again?
With a different concept and a different design?
Yes.
My understanding is that that would probably require a different consent, because part of the consent is things like how it relates to the land, the height, the visual effects, the like if you were to amend this and shape this, particularly if it was to not have significant external changes, then that would just be able to be handled under an amendment. But if you're going to present a different design, it would obviously look different. It would sit on the land differently. It could have different impacts to the environment. You would probably be up for a different consent. And I say so, probably because I'm not an expert.
No, so okay, let's follow that then. How far back could you take? Any ideas on how far back you could take the plan?
So
could it be decreased in size?
Exactly. So what we've applied for under the consent is the shape, the materials, the colours, the visual effects, the treatment of water, things like that. So if you were to say, okay, it doesn't need to, after working through with the users, etc., that it only needed to be 150 square metres instead of 160 square metres, things like that, then you would just handle that with an amendment, which is a very small process. If, however, you said we want to go from 160 to 180, it would still be probably handled as an amendment, but it would be, you'd have to prove different things. It totally depends on what it is that the changes are. A completely new concept that looks different, has different effects, potentially different heights, would be a different one.
Okay, so things like taking walls out, that sort of scenario would be hard.
It depends which walls.
Those are the sorts of things. Okay.
Oh, sorry, Alison. No, look.
No, it's okay.
Love to hear your point of view.
No.
Sorry.
Alison.
That's okay. Sorry. Thank you. It's moved on.
Oh, okay. I note on page 40, number 43 on page 50. So I'm going to bounce around a little bit here. Given the gateway proposal to be located in the Claim Park, this proposal has been considered in relation to 2000 Claim Park management plan. It is noted the development plan enables gateway to be located in a specified area. Can I just note that the site indicated in that plan was actually in the car park? It wasn't on the south side of the stream. I've mentioned this to you before. The consultations I've been involved in, the south side of the stream was basically never shown to us as being an option. The McLean Park plan has the site indicated as in the car park.
So I'm sorry, Councillor Halliday, but that's not correct. Through the process with McLean Park, we went out with 3 options in the middle of the process, and that showed different spaces. As a result of that consultation, so we flagged that the northern area end of the park was the best space to be because of the proximity to where the boats launch. From iwi's point of view around the gateway, as Mahina described this morning. So it was always going to be in that northern end of the park, but as part of that consultation, there was a very strong community view that the southern side of the Tukoto stream should become part of that project area. So the finalised development plan that came out, that was adopted by council, clearly shows that the project area, where the gateway could be situated, extends to the south side of the stream.
We might have to agree to disagree on that one.
I can show you the development plan. It's published on the website.
Yeah, I know. I've got copies of it right here. The next question, how much weight was given to the Parapara Umi Beach Community Outcomes document? It states on page 7, 2.4, and I want to know whether this was taken into consideration by the governance group and the TRC recommendations that no more buildings, this is from a community consultation through that process, and 2.4 says that no more buildings are built on McLean Park and that the park is enhanced for public entertainment and enjoyment. That's, to me, quite an indicator that the community doesn't have a requirement to want a building in that area. Was that taken into consideration in the design brief?
So the McLean Park Management Plan, from my understanding, was after that outcome document, and again it was socialised very widely around the community and around the what you've said around the enjoyment of the park. That was all part of what was discussed through the management plan process, and there was strong support for having a gateway in that location.
I'm not disputing that there's strong support for having a gateway to Kapiti Island in that location. It's just whether it's an actual building or perhaps something else that's perhaps more in fitting with what the local community asked for in that outcomes document.
So we certainly didn't hear through the McLean Park management process that there was a desire to not have any further buildings in the park.
I would have thought that outcomes document would have been something that fed into that. That's a fairly primary document.
I guess we could continue to debate
We
that.
could. My apologies. Number 4, back on page 43. The recommendations, it says in the 2013 report that, you know, the recommendations are put forward, but that was the end of the report. I'm under the impression that option 4 was taken up by the operator who actually had a relationship based on that recommendation. I can only assume it was based on the recommendation to, it was taken up and there was a relationship formed between them and the boat club. But as per the email from the boat club, that relationship didn't end well, and we heard the same from Mr. Barrett this morning. You care to comment on that at all?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Were you aware that you state in the in this form here that there wasn't any options taken up on there, but I'm under the impression that there was. Was that a correction that needed to be made, or is that incorrect?
I'm sorry, I'm still unsure of the question. What part of the report are you referring to?
I'm number 4, page 43, 2013, a feasibility study was completed. The estimated cost of the proposal was 30 million. The recommendations from the study did not proceed any further, but they did. Option 4 was taken up.
So option 4 of the feasibility study are you referring to?
Correct. What the recommendation came back was one of the options that could be pursued was the operator building relationship with the boat club, which was done.
Okay, so apologies, I guess to be more precise, there were one of the recommendations was around a gateway building at quite a large amount of investment from council, and that didn't go any further.
No, that didn't. No, but there was a relationship there, and apparently didn't end that well. That might have been through a little. Well, I won't get into the reasons why not. Page 46, number 21. There's been a lot of angst. Well, I've had emails from local architects in relation to invitation to outside architects in this situation. And I note that there was weights towards an iconic building in the brief that went out to architects. Why? Look, we've been running a Love Local operation, well, a Love Local program here. Why wasn't this just kept locally with regards to architects? This was put out. I know this was an invited scenario, and one of the weight was towards an iconic building, which I'm sorry, I'm going to hark back to the outcomes thing. Was suggested we didn't really need an iconic building there, but why wasn't this just kept locally?
So there's two reasons. Firstly, this process was underway prior to COVID, and also the confirmation that we would be supporting locally further than we already do. So this process had already started. Secondly, there were some really key criteria for how we selected architects, and we wanted to ensure that in the short time frame we had, we capitalised on the ability to enable creativity and work with architects that were familiar with things such as working in a coastal zone, working with iwi, and all those key specific criteria for the project. And then the architects that were invited to put in a tender meet that criteria.
Okay. I've just got some questions now based on from the talks this morning. Darren from Hunters Architects mentioned a assessment of $1.2 million adding to the cost of the building being in the car park if the building goes there. Was that pointed out in the application that was put forward, or is that correct?
I'm not sure about those specifics, sorry, but what I can comment on is the designs that didn't use up the car park were situated in too close to the stream and in the dune, so would never have got consent.
I appreciate that. I guess as ward councillor down there, I'm very well aware of the parking issues that we have down there, but I'll leave that part of that conversation for now. That's me for now. Thank you very much for your answers.
Very good. We've got James Coates going on. Hold on, before I go to you, James, Sophie Hemford has a hand up. She hasn't asked questions before. Sophie.
Cool, thank you. Just one quick question. So say we put in this application, get the funding, with any community consultation and the collection of the community's thoughts on the current concept, how would this be able to tangibly influence the outcome, and what processes would that feedback then go through to input into the final building that was brought to council to choose whether we green light or not? Because as Wayne mentioned at the beginning, there is that option of sending the money back. So I wonder the process of, one, collecting that feedback from the community and those thoughts from the community, but then secondly, what process that would go through to then influence the final building design and the concept that was brought to us. Does that make sense?
Yes, I can probably answer the first part of that question, and then I might hand over to the Chief Executive. So around the process, ideally we would start working with the those key people that are potentially going to be based in the facility, the key community representatives that have been involved right through the project to date with TRC, so they have a good understanding of the project and the reasons why the building has got the functions that it has and the location. And then so that would help us build up more of an understanding of the detailed design. It's also really important that we obviously make it functionally work well. And then so once we've got a bit further around having something more tangible to take out to the community, it would be very difficult to go out with a concept design and ask for feedback from a very wide range of people and end up with a functional, well-rounded design building. So it's around striking that balance of having a good starting point for discussion and still being able to take in feedback and make the building work.
And potentially also around going back to something that we spoke about earlier around telling those genuine and authentic stories. And I think that's what's been really missing from this, is that there doesn't seem to have been a kind of a story around, there has been in some regard, but I feel like that's also what's lacking. And also just being able to bring everyone along, I think something that I've also, and I wonder whether this could be kind of broadened, is that I think one of the reasons why we could be getting so much community backlash against this particular is because the community doesn't feel like they're being addressed in that broader scope of people who are users. And ultimately, as was mentioned earlier, we want the community to be excited about this because it is an incredible opportunity and something that could be really awesome. So I also wonder whether we could consider those stories throughout this next stage of the process too, and really sharing the relationship with iwi and really making that part of the discussion as well.
I absolutely agree, and I think you're right. That is one of the things that has been missing. So the designs have been showed as standalone, with none of the context around all the exciting things that go with it, and what it does bring to the local community and the wider region, and although also the ability to talk about our history and culture and all the things that it means to iwi and to us as local residents. So being able to tell those stories alongside working on finalising the design and bringing the community on the journey with us is absolutely what we'd be wanting to achieve. And we really do feel like this is such an exciting opportunity for the district, but we need everyone to be on and to be working with us on that. So acknowledge that has been missing.
Awesome, thanks, Alison.
James.
Thank you, Guru. I've just got 4 more follow-up questions, and sorry for being nitpicky. As I said, I've been pretty critical of the information to date, and the opening date was something that was mentioned earlier. The report actually refers to an opening date of October 2020, which differs from the date that was given in response. And I guess, why is this important? Because my concerns have been around the budgets and so forth, and it's important if we are to proceed with this, that it is built on time, on budget, and that we're aware of any ongoing OPEX costs and the duration, and how long they go for, because we're already on the back foot with this project, as Sophie's alluded to. So for it to blow out in any of those areas is just not good enough. It's not where we want to be. So could we just reconfirm? Actually, I appreciate we can't confirm an exact date because there are some unknowns, but there is a date in the report, and then there was, which is October next year, and then there was a time frame of 12 to 18 months with a build starting end of this year.
Yes, sorry, that was me, and it was pointed out via text in the background, but I didn't notice until we'd finished questions. So what is in the report is right. Sorry, that was my mistake.
Thank you, Alison. The second one is, there's been a lot of discussion, which has been great, around the consultation. Could we please have that recirculated, particularly the points around the, I think, Alison, you'd mentioned feedback on 3 different options in terms of the facility itself.
So that was back during the McLean Park management plan process.
Correct. If we could have that recirculated, that would be helpful, regardless of the decision today. The third point is they reference around not using local architects in the Love Local campaign. I think you've obviously answered that question already, but can we be reassured? And I know that we can't bind contractors to using, they might have their preferred subbies, but what would be even worse is if we do proceed with this, we award a contractor to do the work and he hires everyone out of Wellington. Again, that's not going to be a good look. So what can we do to address that concern?
So as part of our procurement process, the weightings are towards local suppliers.
So what happens if Crow Construction wins the award and decides to use contractors out of the Kapiti area?
I see Sean's turned on his video.
It's a really important topic that we, if we are to proceed with this, that we are supporting as many local businesses as possible.
I'll absolutely take that on board, and I know in the past with tenders and when we've worked with the preferred contractor, we have built into the fact that we expect it to be locally supported.
You can, sorry if I could add, you can nominate subcontractors if you choose to. It just means that you accept a bit more risk maybe in terms of cost if you're nominating those subcontractors.
Thank you, Sean. I guess I've made my point around the importance, if we move forward, that we do focus on local. Last comment is just actually around, has there been any engagement with the Youth Council, or probably more importantly, back to Sophie's point, around moving forward, they could be a valuable contributor from a youth perspective.
Absolutely, and we have had this discussion because there's other groups that we would really like to connect with as well. For example, the Accessibility Advisory Group and the Older Persons Council. So those key groups that we already have those relationships with will absolutely be involved in the process.
Thanks, team. That's all from me.
Gwen, did I see your hand up before? You're all right, or do you want to speak? You're okay.
Muted. Cool. I'm muted now. Thank you. Just on that public consultation thing, on page 6.20 of the PDU application form, it explicitly asks, has there been public consultation? If yes, what were the results? And if no, is there a plan to do so? And later on, they talk separately about stakeholder consultation. So the document looks at it in two separate ways. And in terms of stakeholder consultation, it's looking at it as a risk in terms of whether you're able to engage them or not. But in terms of actually asking a question and moving things along here, how long would we expect the resource consent to take, whether it's publicly notified or not? Or I suppose either or, if it's publicly notified or if it's non-notified.
Yeah. No, go, Alison.
So the consent has been lodged and accepted, but we'll be waiting to know the outcome from today before it goes any further. Until we know whether it's what level of notification it's going to get, it is difficult to answer that question. But there's been significant work done on potential areas of concern in advance. But we've engaged Carter's consultants, so they've put the consent together for us. We've worked really closely with our resource consents team, the parks team, the roading team. So there's been considerable thought around any potential questions that would come out from a consent well prior to it going in.
If you sort of stuck your finger in and stuck your finger in the air and took the wind on an average time for say a publicly notified resource consent, how long would that take?
I might look to someone else to help me out here. I don't know if Sean's got any idea that we could. Sorry, Sean.
It's very difficult to determine that. I mean, it could 6 to 8 weeks, or it could be 6 to 8 months. If Angela's, I'm not sure if Angela's actually here or Natasha, but Paikakariki Seawall, I think that took 6 months. But then for a smaller scale work at the water treatment plant, it's 6 weeks.
And so I guess for an example, the McLean Park development that we've done, obviously not a building, but in that area. And so that was a reasonably straightforward consent and we got it within the 4 weeks.
Cool, thank you.
Right. Jocelyn Pravnov.
Thank you. So I have a few questions. I'm just following up on what Gwen was saying. So the application, so the resource consent, does that have to be issued before we can actually lodge that application, or is it just a case of where the application needs to be lodged?
Needs to be accepted, and we had confirmation at the start of the week that it has been.
Okay, so in terms of that, there's no delays potentially.
No.
Okay, so what we've heard today, and I suppose in fact we've heard over the last few weeks, and we've heard from ourselves, we've heard even the tenor of the report. It's about we've got this deadline. If we don't meet it, we're potentially going to lose 200,000 K. And from what I'm seeing is there's two issues. There's one about this, the design of the building, which then relates to consultation, and the other one is about the feasibility of the whole project. And so there are two motions on the table at present. Well, there's two motions, and my question is, if there are some other, is this potentially a flyer? I haven't got any words, but if there's some more checks and balances put in place to make some of the councillors happy, like for example, so the business plan hasn't been completed, can the council, once if the application goes forward and there's another motion there that says something like that the councillors have to approve the business case and the results of consultation and any other information that can be gathered. So we've actually got, a far better picture about what this whole project looks like. Because this morning we had 3 hours worth of public speaking time, and a lot of that was us asking more questions. And so there was obviously a lot of information that us as councillors wanted to know. So there's obviously a dearth of information there that that needs to be filled. So I'm wondering whether by doing that, and then also putting a clause in there that says that we will not spend any more than 200k or whatever the figure is on this project, full stop. So is that a flyer? Whether that's a question for the CE or anyone else who might like to answer that question, please.
I wouldn't recommend you put a cap on the number. About both sides of that, how everybody always underestimates numbers and surprises come along and it's too much, and we've also heard that our numbers are too high because we've allowed for an extra contingency. So I wouldn't recommend that. You still, as I've said, will have the ability to make the final decision. This is only a decision to make an application to the PGF.
Yeah, so
regardless of what conditions you would like to put in, what we have said to you is we will be bringing back the business case and proposal to you for a decision about whether to go ahead or not. So
I think it's always good to have that written down though, because particularly as the second recommendation stands, it's when this is actually submitted, or I can't remember the exact word, but it's actually a case of when as opposed to if. So by having some of those caveats in there might actually make it easier for some councillors to potentially get this over the line today. So it is a possibility, I suppose. It just depends on the devil of the wording.
Councillor, I guess that's for you and the councillors to consider which you move things in debate.
Okay.
Right. Anybody else? No. I've got a question. How much has it cost to bring it to this point? How much have you spent to bring it to this point?
Janice or Darren are probably best placed to give an indicative.
So we don't have all costs confirmed at this stage. But things like the cultural impact assessment and things like that are still it's TBC. So I'm going to say approximately 250,000, but that is an approximate figure because not everything is in.
Okay.
That's including and a lot of consultants and professional reports, etc., are required for the resource consenting. Things like the topographical and geotechnical surveys and things like that are included, and that's well under the 15% that the QS recommended.
Right. Okay. So you're looking at a rounded figure of 250,000.
Approximately.
Okay. Janet Holbrook.
Yes, it seems we might be about to go on to the recommendations, and just to follow on from what the previous councillor said, I had a couple of suggested extra recommendations that I forwarded to fellow councillors into Democracy Services yesterday evening. So I'm just wondering if it's a good idea to put them up now, because maybe the same person would like to move them as well, whoever moves them.
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Mayor. We are approaching
it's 7 orders.
Yeah, we are approaching the 6-hour limit for the meeting. So a councillor would need to move that this meeting be extended.
Well, seeing as I'm unmuted, I'll move that.
Okay.
So
I've got some suggested wording here that this meeting of council be extended beyond 6 hours duration to complete items 8.2, 8.3, 8.4, 8.5, 8.6, 8.7, 9, 10, 11 and 12 on the agenda.
So moved.
do you have a seconder
You
for
need
that?
to move that you're suspending standing order 4.2. Part of the wording, Gracie.
Okay. So that the council suspends standing order 4.2 to extend beyond 6 hours the duration of this meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. .2, yeah.
So this has been moved by Councillor Janet Holbrook, and I'll second it. All those in favour? Press your buttons.
So we have 10 votes in favour and 1 against.
1 against. Carrie, can we go back to Janet Holbrook?
Right, so I had a couple of extra recommendations that I drafted. I just thought it might be good to put them up now so that we can then discuss everything at once. So the first one shouldn't be there, the second one replaced that one. I think Councillor Randall has his hand up, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Councillor Randall. Bernie.
Mr. Mayor, I would object under standing orders. These are 2 resolutions. They're not amendments. They seem to be 2 new resolutions and don't comply with standing orders about notices of motion. That's my point, Mr. Chair.
We've moved further resolutions before in council meetings. I'm not aware of any standing orders that preclude that. Maybe we could have some guidance from the Chief Executive.
You can indeed, Councillor. I'll just find the appropriate pages. Generally, it's up to the chair to accept or not procedurally. But if you'd like me to check the standing order, you'll just have to give me a couple of seconds to find the appropriate.
Yeah, I think it'd be useful to check the standing orders.
I can word them as an amendment instead, otherwise, and move that once the motions have been moved, if that is necessary.
Mr. Mayor, there's nothing here that says you can't move a motion that isn't in the paper.
So basically, we're adding 2 extra resolutions.
Yeah, I just think they're clearer as extra motions than adding words to the existing, amending the existing,
Yeah.
which they could as well. I mean, we could put comma and that.
No, but I think since the chair can do that, I'll do that. And Councillor Randall, you can choose to manage them. You can ask that the recommendation be taken one after a time, voted on one after a time if you got any objections to the other ones. Okay, so can we go back to the wording?
So I haven't moved this yet. I'm putting it up as a suggestion, as I've heard that we have another councillor who's intending to move the first two, and might be easier if we move them all by the same mover.
Can I just have Angela Boswell, you signal you wanted to move the resolutions 71, 72. Can I have you? Can you have a seconder? Angela, who wants to second this?
I'll second it if nobody else is putting their hand up.
Oh, hold on, Jackie Elliott, did you put your hand up? Because I'd rather, if you're moving the other two, that I separate them.
Sure. Yeah.
So the resolution 71, 72 moved by Angela Boswell and seconded by Jackie Elliott. I now put to the mover and the seconder of 71, 72 whether they will accept the resolutions put forward by Councillor Holbrook. Can I have a response from Angela and Jackie as to whether they accept the resolutions, the extra bits suggested by Councillor Holbrook?
Thank you. It's really difficult when you're on mute
I can't hear them.
and you want to say something and you can't. So yeah, I'm happy to move them separately or together. I'm not bothered. So if we want to, let's do them separately.
Yes, it's fine with me.
Okay.
So I propose to move recommendations 71, that the council approves an application being made to the Provincial Growth Fund of 50%, 2.23 project, and delegates to the Chief Executive the authority to sign off the final application and support material in general accordance with this report.
Yep, happy to second. Happy to second.
Separately, Mr. Mayor, do you wish to have debate?
Right, so we're going to go into debate on this. So look, I shall start from from Bernie Randall, moving backwards from the council members list that you've got on page 2. You can speak as long as you like, and then I'll move on to the next person, Robert McCann, Sophie Hanford, and so forth. But before that, can I ask Boswell to introduce a resolution?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The first resolution is really what we're here about today, and it is about approving the Provincial Growth Fund application. And this is a really, really important step to ever see this Gateway project come to fruition. As we've heard from many of the submitters this morning and into the afternoon, that this has been on the council plans since 1992. We, unfortunately, as a council in the last few years, we do have a reputation of not investing a lot of money into particularly infrastructure projects, and this is a project that I see huge value in for our economy, our economic development in our community, our tourist, and also just an extra offering to have on the Kapiti coast. This is an opportunity where the council actually gets away with paying 50% of the cost as opposed to 100% of the cost if we were to apply for this grant. We've been working really closely with the PGF people, and this has taken a really long time to put together, and we've had a final sprint towards the last moments to get this application through. And I would just really, really strongly advise everybody to support this application to go through. It is a once in a lifetime opportunity. We have seen, you know, the appearance of COVID-19 and issues there, and these kinds of things might not come around again. So we need to step up and take advantage of it. Thank you.
Right. Next, Bernie Randall, do you want to say your piece?
Yeah, this is why I objected earlier on that we should remain unmuted, but you ruled differently, Mr. Mayor. I would agree completely and absolutely with everything Councillor Halliday raised. We were both ward councillors. The Paraparaumu, it's a park. McLean Park is a local park, contrary to what people think. And the people in Paraparaumu have spoken out about this, and I'll be voting according to what the people in Paraparaumu, the people who live there, what they do. And also agree what Councillor Compton has said. So that's what I wish to say.
Okay, Councillor Rob McCann.
Sure, thank you. I recognise this is a really tough decision for a council because we have always tried to, in my time and new councillors and the previous ones, tried to be very conscious of our budget. But at the same time, I know that we ask the government to step up and invest in our communities. And this is one of those times where if we don't put something forward, neither do they. And I do see this as a significant opportunity. But I do also think that we have recognised that it's not a perfect opportunity and that there are flaws, if I can use that word, within the process, and what COVID-19 has truncated what would have been a better process. So I think we need to take this step quite clearly because we still have the opportunity to pull back if we don't get the right consultation and the right results. So I think this is a very, very good first step. And it's one where we still have a parachute that we can bail out, so to speak. So that's why, after careful consultation, I'll be supporting this motion. Thank you.
Right, next, Sophie Hanford.
Cool. Kia ora, thank you. And I too support pretty much exactly what Councillor Rob McCann has said, and in that I support, after careful consideration and just through listening to everything that has been said today, and from the perspective of a rangatahi, a young person, I immediately thought of and thought about the future generations in Kapiti, and I want to ensure that we're leaving them the very best possible legacy. But I do have to say, though, the rushed nature of this end of the process does not have me feeling 100% confident that this is the one. But I do also agree with Rob in that this is an opportunity, and because we also have the chance to do some community consultation and get more feedback following this application, and still have the opportunity to consider that feedback and those points that are raised by our community. So for that reason too, I also feel like this is an opportunity because I think that we want the community to feel like this is their space. And for this to happen, it is important that we bring them along with us. And that was a concern that I had from the beginning of this conversation today. And I think this project does really have the potential, as I mentioned, to be so incredibly special and a real asset, but only if our community has bought into the process and the outcome and the vision. So we must tell a story alongside our iwi partners through this next stage of the process if we want to ensure that we're making the best possible decision following this application, if we are granted the funding through the PGF and then we make that final decision. So for that reason too, I'll be supporting today.
Thank you. Martin Holiday.
Thank you, Mayor Guru. And firstly, Mayor Guru, I just wanted to thank you for allowing the conversations to flow as they have today. It's been an exceptionally long meeting, but you've allowed everyone to get their views across in a very unhurried manner. Thank you very much. As Ward Councillor, I recognise Carl and Chris Weber as my EV liaisons down for Parapara Umu Beach, but I do hope to see that expand. I acknowledge the local advisory group and the work that they've done. I also acknowledge Janice Hill and the team, which I put the GGG group into, for all the work that has occurred over the past 2 months. It's been a very, very full-on project for you guys. I support this process, although I have expressed reservations to see how it evolves. I feel that Parapara Beach is being listened to, but I feel it's not being heard. The option to be heard was the advisory group, which has been put to the side. As Ward Councillor, I'll point out that the KCDC Community Outcomes document for Parapara Umu Beach states that no more buildings are built on McLean Park and that the park is enhanced for public entertainment and enjoyment. I don't see how that relates to the current governance group stating that this needs to be an anchor building for the park. This should have been a guiding principle in the brief as far as I'm concerned. Like I said, I've supported this process and I have expressed reservation. I've given KCD the space to develop this concept, but this process should be community driven. That was the purpose of the advisory group, and this to me has not occurred. The GG group was not local. It does not have a local understanding, and the comment in our briefing, such as spending some hours considering, and one thing I found out about the panel is, I found on the panel is how significant Kapiti Island is, does not instill me with confidence that this group has the best, or has a full understanding of our beach area. To me, there are two separate issues here: a departure biosecurity experience that reflects the rustic Kapiti experience, and two, a gateway visitor space for the Kapiti coast. And I think we're trying to jam too much into one space. I think both of those are two very separate topics, and the gateway to Kapiti coast needs to be have careful strategic consideration. We cannot afford to lose any parking at the beach. We're already stretched. It's fantastic that additional parking option has been factored or facilitated through this process, and I think that's a definite win. I do not have confidence that the business case in its current form stacks up. This is based on my own business experience. I would like more detail in this area, but if I was to move forward. I note the PGF timeframe has been relaxed, and maybe this could be taken into consideration in our decision process. To me, there's been a step missed out here. The feasibility, or the TRC feasibility report, didn't come back till the end of March. Oh, sorry, it didn't come back till March. In my opinion, there's been a lot of cherry picking in the intel to support a narrative. Also, a lot of recommendations have been put forward out of that feasibility that haven't had the ability to be challenged or clarified. And I do think that was the role of the advisory group. Although the local advisory group was formed to give voice to the local community, it has not been used. It met once and it's only been briefed. And I think that this was a missing link. And I take on Darren Hunter's words, that was the opportunity to pick this thing apart and really get the community thoughts and suggestions in there. COVID-19, local, supporting local. I would like to have seen this to be a local project. Yet the GGG group was made up of non-local. We have quality local firms here, and I think we should have supported them in this. And over the years, I'm sorry, I've seen an eroding of confidence. This is what I'm hearing in the messaging I'm getting and the letters I've received from my community. But over the years, there's been an eroding confidence and trust in the KCDC process, which is now reflected in the attitudes around what KC says it will do versus what it actually does. And we saw this through that process. And as is reflected in the correspondence I have read. I will not be supporting this as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Jocelyn Pravno.
So thank you, Guru, I know this has been a very long process today, but I think we're in a better position now than we were at the beginning of the day. So I suppose for me, I've had a few thoughts which I jotted down even before the beginning of the day, and they've changed a little bit. But I suppose for this, to me, this project, it has a lot of good points, but and something needs to be done there. But you know, I've had concerns, and I suppose I've been voiced in some of the questions I've been rising around the projected growth numbers, the initial costings, and then what it's going to cost later. We haven't seen the business plan, and also, you know, we had 3 hours of questions this morning, which shows that there was a lot more information that councillors could have been provided to actually help us make this decision in a much more speedy way, and hopefully in a better way as well. We've also heard that if this gateway doesn't go ahead, that you know, that one of the businesses have said, John Barrett will say that his business will continue to survive. I think also too, you know, we haven't really touched on, well, it was vaguely touched on today about, you know, whether this is the best value for money. You know, we've got the Waikanae Library, which is going to miss out on funds because this has been put in front of it. We've also got Ngā Manu, which is also putting another application into the PGF. And so it's a case of where, you know, these things probably should have all been weighed into making a decision there. A lack of consultation is a big concern for me. And I'm pleased to see now that that potentially could change. I also, at this point in time, you know, I have to acknowledge all the really, really hard work that council staff and other people have put into doing this work, and particularly under the short timeframes and under COVID-19. So it's been a difficult time, and you know, if people had their time again, they'd probably do it differently, but we're in the situation now where we've got to make a decision today or not. I suppose the report really, you can sort of see it's almost a fear factor. You know, the report that says that, you know, we basically got to make this decision today, otherwise we're going to lose this money, and it's not necessarily about the quality of the report, it's about getting it over the line. I know that sounds quite blunt, but that's sort of how I feel. And I suppose also too, I think Martin he touched on this, that this is actually being driven by council staff, where really it should be driven from the ground up. And so I think if there had been a lot more, you know, obviously it was really great today hearing a lot of these major stakeholders having to hear what they really had to say, but they should have been, you know, we should have heard all that from the very beginning. And it's a real shame, I have to say, that not actually having any financial stake in the game as well, which really shows that they do really support it rather than just carrying along the process. And I have to say, you know, if I was putting an application like this to the bank, I think the bank would say to me really politely, go away and come back when you've got a bit more information. And that's how I sort of feel about this today. But I have to say, having the 2 extra clauses in there has made me feel slightly happy, because it's given us a bit more breathing time to actually take stock of all the missing pieces, which are basically us being able to review the business plan, potentially looking at the structure of the building, and then making a decision rather than just saying, okay, we put an application in and we need to go with it now, even though we might potentially wish down the line that we don't. So so based on that, so basically at the beginning of the day, with the way that the 2 clauses were written, I was not going to support those 2 recommendations, but I will now support them. So and I think, you know, I'm pleased that, you know, certainly I want to see something there, and I know that there's a lot of money at stake here, but I don't think we should be saying yes just because of that money. I also would like to say, as I mentioned before, having some limitation somewhere on how much money is being spent, because we've already heard that you shouldn't put a limitation on, because, you know, it's almost a given that it's going to go over budget. So, you know, how much money are we actually committing to? So, yes, so thank you very much, and onwards and upwards.
Thank you. Councillor Gwyn Compton.
Cool. Thank you. First of all, I want to say that in principle, I've always supported the idea of having some sort of gateway facility on that south side of the stream at Parapara Beach. But that support isn't a blanket endorsement for whatever comes along, and I think that's something that we should all consider in this as well. For me, there's two questions regarding this. The first is whether the capex for the Gateway project should be prioritised ahead of other pieces of core council infrastructure that need addressing. This is directly relevant to what we're discussing today because the second recommendation does ask staff to go away and reprioritise capex budgets to actually enable us to do this. When we're facing what is the greatest economic downturn in, what is it now, about 90 years since the Great Depression, tens of thousands of New Zealanders are losing their jobs at the highest rate in 20 years. Everyone's finances are tight. Should this gateway be taking priority? In my mind, we should be spending on the must-haves and our core assets, not the nice-to-haves. It's important to note that many of the core council assets that we could invest in, like accelerating the Waikanae Library replacement, they could deliver equal, if not greater, economic and social and cultural benefits, including to rangatahi who use those spaces extensively with far more certainty about those returns too. The second is whether I can have confidence in this process. It's the only process that we got presented with back in March, and I think in all good faith, we all wanted to give it a chance to see what it could deliver. So the question is, has it delivered a concept that's supported by our community, and can that concept deliver the outcomes promised by it? Can further work on the indicative visitor numbers and financials panel beat them into something that is more realistic and would be financially viable and wouldn't require ongoing council support? On the basis of what I've seen and the failure of those numbers to adequately account for the impact of COVID-19, I'm not comfortable that they can, especially when the starting point is looking at over 300% growth. It hasn't factored in the lack of international tourists who aren't going to come flooding back in anytime soon. It hasn't factored in the recession and the dampening impact that that will have on domestic tourism. And we've seen that happen in past downturns, but we've got the behavioural change from COVID-19 that's going to make people think quite differently about how they travel, even domestically, for tourism. You know, I mentioned 300% growth before. In terms of how ambitious that is as a growth figure, not even Auckland houses can do that in a decade. So I certainly wouldn't be comfortable in putting an application for funding to the PGF with that sort of figures behind it. Has the process allowed for adequate public consultation to inform this concept that's going to be put forward to the PGF? I think we've seen in the past week, and we've heard today, about how deeply divided our community is on the concept. And many have called out the lack of genuine consultation with the wider public as a major issue with this. The key stakeholders in the process, the two principal beneficiaries of it in terms of the two tour operators, have quite differing opinions on whether this is needed or not. You know, our business community is divided, the arts community is divided on it. There's no strong mandate from the community, and I don't believe that we could go to the Provincial Growth Fund and say, hand on heart, that we have that mandate from the public of Kapiti. Has the way that this process been run, can it stand up to scrutiny in the public eye? I'm not convinced it can, and I'm still extremely uncomfortable with many aspects of how the process played out, including that we are using an architect from outside of the district to tell this really important and unique to Kapiti story that's going to be captured in the Gateway building. As was discussed earlier today, we went into quite an in-depth discussion around Zealandia. And now that offers a similar product to Kapiti Island. Sure, it doesn't have the boat or the overnight stays, but fundamentally it's an iconic nature sanctuary showing what New Zealand was like before humans arrived. And even 24 years later, after it was set up, it's still needing Wellington City Council to fund it. Even after they got rid of their problematic visitor centre, there was $1 million that went into that from Wellington City Council last year. You know, Zealandia has access to a far greater domestic and international visitor pool than Kapiti Island's ever going to have, but it still can't reach its visitor numbers that it projected. Like I said at the start, I support the idea of having a gateway facility of some sort on that south side of the stream. But in my mind, that recommended design isn't it. And unfortunately, I don't have confidence in that carrying on this current process is going to deliver an acceptable outcome by the time the PGF makes its decision. I believe that there are just too many questions, and we've seen that today. Just this is why this has all gone so long. There is just so many questions, and there's so much uncertainty around it that I cannot have confidence that we're going to reach a position that is going to be viable in any way. So given my lack of confidence in the process, I believe there are far more pressing issues with core council assets that should be prioritised ahead of the gateway. And as I said before, spending the money there is still going to generate economic and social and cultural benefits and even resilience benefits for our communities as well. But if these resolutions don't succeed today, it's not the end of the gateway process. It doesn't mean the money has been wasted. Things like geotechnical surveys, things like the visitor surveys, they all help better inform the work we do going forward. And if anything, the work that's been done so far is going to help lead us to get to a better outcome next time we get there. So as I said earlier, many of these things that we could reprioritise instead could generate direct and immediate economic and social and cultural benefits for a much wider section of our community than the Gateway could manage to provide, even one of its most ambitious projections. So unfortunately, I can't support the motions and the resolutions on the table today. And actually, to make things easier when we get to voting, rather than the sort of confusion we had last time, I'd just like to indicate now that I'd like divisions on each of those two, please.
Thank you, Councillor Compton. Now is Councillor Jackie Elliott.
Bishop. Hi, look, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, great. I'm very happy to second all the recommendations this afternoon, and I have certainly made my feelings about this opportunity known to you all in writing, and I hope you read it, and thank you. I fully support this project. That's me.
Oh, you're done.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. Very to the point. Councillor James Coates.
Thank you, Guru. Look, it's no secret that I've shared similar concerns as Councillor Compton. I kind of laughed at his email because his experience of time in a bank was the opposite of mine. I was the person coming to the likes of Gwyn on the other side of the table trying to present cash flow forecasts and so forth in the different businesses that I've set up over the years. So I absolutely understand where he's coming from, and hence my concerns around the revenue and the ongoing operational costs. I agree the process hasn't been perfect, but I think in terms of the goals or the outcomes, that we all agree that that's what we want for the district and for our community. It's just really about how we get there, and there's some differing views around that process. It's interesting around the economic benefit, which is often understated. And I, being in this role for 13 years now, one year I took my family over to Napier to the SeaWorld, and I deliberately kept every receipt that I spent from the weekend, from buying an ice cream to buying a book at the warehouse for my wife. And then I tallied it at the end of a 2-day weekend, and it gave me a real anecdotal example of that economic benefit into a community. Now, arguably, that could be a day trip from Wellington up to Parapara-Umu to do a crossing on the boat, but that would possibly still include a coffee at the local cafe, maybe filling up with some gas and so forth. And all those things do contribute to our local economy, and I think that shouldn't be understated, and that we don't just focus on the ticket costs and the direct revenue from the facility. That being said, I have got major concerns around the operating model or the cost of the facility. And I've referred to them around, my thing is you own it. If it's going to cost ratepayers $50,000 a year ongoing and it's not going to be self-sustainable, then that's what the report says, and we vote on that, and you back it because you believe in it. you don't support a proposal that has optimistic or inflated numbers with potentially an unrealistic goal of becoming cost neutral, and then having to go back to the ratepayers to top up the kitty because it didn't work out how we thought it would. And in my email to staff with questions, I referred to Newstrom and Foxton, and also Zealandia, as Councillor Compton has referred to as well. That being said, I think that we probably can all acknowledge that there needed to be better comms around this. We haven't told that story well. We haven't told the cultural story, the points that staff and Councillor Hanford has referred to as well. And with that is the other benefits that come through having a facility like this on the coast. What is a shame out of this is the impact it has had on the reputation of the two operators out of there. Probably unintended consequences, but quite clearly we heard from both of them this morning, and at least one of them concerned about the reputation it casts on their business from the perception from the community that this has all been done for two operators. To add to that, you've got the concern from that operator that it might compromise their business model, and I take that seriously. So I will be supporting this today, but only because of the additional recommendations. I will not be supporting this if we have the report come back and the information, the business case, the revenue doesn't satisfy me that it isn't going to be a burden on this community for years to come. If we do continue with it, it needs to be built on time, it needs to be built to budget, and it needs to meet its targets, or at least that it's realistic that it can meet its targets. I am slightly reassured by the 35% contingency, and I refer to that because it goes back to the angst that's out there in the community where people are looking at the headline figure of $4.6 million, and as we've heard, they haven't looked at the breakdown of that. That 35% of that is made up from contingency and may not be spent. But again, I think we could have done a better job in telling that story. Councillor Compton referred to the library, and I'm Gwyn, I'm not having a personal, I guess, attack or response to you back around that. I absolutely understand where you come from with that, and it did made me think about that. But we do have an existing library in Waikanae at the moment. It's not like we're without a library there. Ironically, I stand to benefit from there if I supported your view because I have a business there. But, to make the point that we have consciously made a decision to include funding in the budget for further work on that Waikanae library. So we're, I see we've kind of got the best of both worlds. We've got a smaller library there that's meeting the needs of the community in some way. We've got plans there for a future library. And by the looks of it, we'll be progressing a gateway that has been on the table for some 26-7 years. So, look, I will be supporting this. It is with reservations. And I want to make it really clear that if the information that comes back at a later date isn't of a good standard, then I won't be supporting it at the next hurdle.
Thank you, James. Janet Holbrook.
Thank you. I'll try not to be too long because it has been a very long day today, and it's been a really good day too because we've had discussions with some really knowledgeable people this morning from all sorts of different angles. We've had a robust discussion about it. We've asked staff robust questions about it. And now our decision is, do we keep the door open or do we close it? Because once we close it, rest assured, it's going to take a long time before that door opens again. And it's a pretty sticky door. So I just want to, just because I think Councillor Compton made some really good points, I just want to address some of those because that's what debate is all about. So the Waikanae Library, that will happen. We've got that in train in this annual plan and it will happen. But it's not time dependent like this one is. This one is something that we have to kind of do now, really, or try and progress now. or else we've heard it's gone on for 28 years. And I've been involved in other projects where we've had to take a step backward and miss opportunities. And it's very hard to get it back to this stage again. So what the architects provided us with is kind of a blank canvas. And once our arts community really get their heads around that and the opportunity that is for them, then I think they're going to see it for the opportunity that it is. And I know we've had feedback from Kapiti Arts and Creative Industries, but some of the people who provided feedback on that, in fact, aren't artists, but just members of that page. Now, we've had a lot of talk about Zealandia today. I'm not sure why we've had quite so much talk about Zealandia. But for all its faults, Zealandia has actually transformed the whole of the ecology for the Wellington region. And I think that says something to me, that it's not just about necessarily, I mean, it's important to meet operating costs and to break even among, in a certain period of years and to create a good business case. But this project, like that project, is about more than that. It's not just about that. It's about telling our story. It's about acknowledging the history and culture of the area. And it's also about protecting the ecology. It's really important. To me, it is a core asset. We need something like this. We need something to continue to help shape our identity as a community as we grow, and particularly as we go through these difficult times. Yes, we're going through some really hard times, but we've been assured today in this meeting and also in other forums that there are opportunities in tourism and in local tourism, which we can particularly benefit from with only 30% of our visitors coming from overseas. So I'd really like to support this today, and I will be supporting it. We've been assured that there'll be further engagement, that the sustainability and viability will be assessed, and I've put that forward in the 2 extra motions today. And most importantly, we've been assured that there is this strong iwi support. And I think that can't be understated. And that's going to be really crucial as we go through the next stages, because we've got a job to do, which we haven't quite been doing. We've got to tell the story around this, and we've got to do that in partnership with iwi, in partnership with our community, in partnership with rangatahi. So I have confidence that we're going to pull together as a council and as councillors to help tell that story and move this project forward positively. So it's my pleasure to support this today, and I want to thank staff for all the work that's gone into it.
Thank you. Before I hand it over to Angela Buswell, right of reply, I've been in the district for 25 years, and the conversation around this has been going on for 28 years. As a journalist, I've been involved in some of the debates that's been going on since 1995. I've been involved in a whole, I've been on the island was 4 or 5, I don't know, more than a dozen times. And I know that the island has got that's our branding. Where, whenever businesses want to start up, when they make business cards or they design something, the island is featured there. When you want to, people want to take photographs, people go to test their photography on Kapiti Island in the sunset. You're doing pottery, you're a painter, you're a poet. The island looms really large. We are, our logo is the island. So the storytelling is already there in ourselves. It's deep in ourselves. There's a link to Iwi Gateway, and you heard Mai Narangi Baker tell you how they understand the gateway to be. The gateway is not just a place in one spot. The gateway is a gateway into the whole community. It's a gateway into all our hearts of who we are. That's how important this is. And we've been waiting for 28 years to even come close to this. We are very close now. It's really simple. All we're asking here is a vote to say, we take this and apply an application to the PGF funding. The Provincial Development Unit will test this. They're not a bunch of yahoos. They are professionals. They will drill down to this. If our case doesn't match up, we may not get it, but at least we have tried. That's all it is at the moment. And the added resolutions have been added to 72 shows you that the story isn't finished. And as Rob McCann has said, it's unfortunate that we've been caught up too. One is the provincial growth funds process that has taken a long, has got time limits on it. And then the COVID has made it a rush. Despite all that, the staff have done a tremendous amount of work to get it to this point. We are there. So all we are doing today is to put our foot in the door so that it doesn't close it. And if it closes, it's going to take a hell of a long time for it to come back. You know why? One of the questions I asked Jack Mays from DOC is this. The key statutory responsibility for DOC is biodiversity. If they are saying they can do it with a limited biosecurity like they have now, that's all you're going to get. You're not going to get a building after that because they are the investors. Because we don't have, council can't just invest in one biodiversity unit. That's not our responsibility. That's DOC's responsibility. The only way we can do this is to link up in provincial growth fund, allows us that amount of funding to this crown funding, taxpayer funding, that makes us give the gold-plated biosecurity. Why not? What's wrong with having a gold-plated biosecurity? Because Kapiti Island is one of the top 5 nature reserves in this whole country. It is the symbol of who we are. We need to gold-plate it. And if the taxpayers are going to pay for it, all the better. So all we're doing at this moment is to actually get this across the line so that we are true to ourselves to say, look, here's a chance for us to get extra funding to make this happen. After 28 years of, are we there yet? Are we there yet? We are getting too old to ask that question. Grow up, please. So I support this. And I asked Angela Buswell write a reply before we put it to the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for contributing today, especially the 10 people that came in to speak earlier in the day. It's really fantastic to see and hear really good professional reasons for pros and cons of projects like this in our district. And it is a district-wide project. In fact, it's a regional project. And we need this to now be a national project. We need to be really highlighting how beautiful the Kapiti Coast is and how accessible one of the most amazing islands is in New Zealand. And to draw comparisons to Zealandia, Zealandia is more of a commercial operation. It has way more overheads. It's going to be really difficult for them to break even and make money. We have the advantage that we have some really sharp operators in terms of getting people over to Kapiti Island. That's their business. They are really passionate about what they're doing. Some have been in it for a few years and some have been in it for a very, very long time and showcased our region across the world. John Barrett and his family have done a tremendous job working on Kapiti Island and profiling us across the world. So we've had some really knowledgeable speakers come in today, and I absolutely appreciate their voice of reason and their expertise. Also, I want to identify the fact that iwi and our local Māori have been very supportive of the process. They have walked alongside us throughout this project with our staff, and I'm really proud of that process and the fact that a byproduct of this process is rejuvenating the local stream, which is really, really important for our local iwi and the history that that has. Another thing that hasn't really been spoken about too much today is the LTP and the budget that was in that. And over the next 4 years, we had budgeted to spend just on $2 million towards a gateway of sorts. So there is money there that has been budgeted for. So also hearing from DOC and identifying the fact that our end-to-end offerings for Kapiti Island, and it was also seconded by John Barrett, that it's a third world setup. Why do we accept third world conditions in an amazing district that we've got in Kapiti? Why is it so bad for anybody to try and aim a little bit higher? we have got the opportunity to aim higher here. We've got the opportunity to almost double our expectations of what we could have offered if we were doing it by ourselves. So what is so wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with it. Absolutely. I believe that we have made the right decision today, and looking at the numbers, I am absolutely I'm overwhelmed. I'm so grateful that we have been able to pull this together and put this application forward. The next step will be to get the application accepted. So I would just like to also thank our staff for the amazing job that they have done with all the consultation through the McLean Park development, also through the TRC consultations. That I was involved with a number of those meetings, and their professionalism was outstanding. Their level-headedness and keeping a cool in some feisty arguments was commendable. So with that, I would just like to end by saying this is an amazing opportunity, and I'm so pleased that that seed that was planted back in 1992 has now just about broken the surface, and we are just about there to see it flourish. So thank you.
Right. Resolutions 71, 72, including the new ones that have been accepted by Bushwell and Elliott, moved by Councillor Bushwell, seconded by Jack Elliott. You can cast your votes now, please.
We have 8 yes and 3 no. I believe we've had a division called by Councillor Compton.
Division call. Yep.
So Grayson, can you run through the falls for me?
Yes, please.
Grayson, are you there?
I'll call them out, Shanika.
Oh, thank you.
The Mayor, Councillor Buswell, Councillor Coots, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Holborough, Councillor Pravano, Councillor McCann, Councillor Hempwood. Are you not that fast, Grayson?
I was on mute. My apologies.
It's all
Sorry, McCann and
Hanford.
And against
hang on, you've missed Pravano in there, sorry. Yep. Councillor Pravano as well.
And those against Councillor Randall, Councillor Halliday, Councillor Compton. No abstentions.
Right.
The final vote is 4 in favour, 3 against.
Okay. Thank you very much, all the councillors, for a robust deliberation and voting to each one of you. And I can add that the fact that those who didn't vote have signaled the fact, and some of us who did vote have signaled clearly that we want to see the process more robust going ahead. So we're not all done yet. So this is just another beginning. Thank you very much. So can we take a 20-minute, 10 minutes break and come back? Let's say just 4:30. 4:30. We take a break until then.
Okay.
Hi, Grayson.
It's Tanika.
Hi, Tanika. I can't see either of you on my screen.
I believe the mayor called them all together.
Oh, good.
Just getting my cup of tea ready. Right. Right now on item 8.3, sustainable transport strategy. Susan Rushmere and Sean Mellon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councillors. Good afternoon. So Suzanne has got family commitments, so she is not able to be here. But the paper is the draft sustainable transport strategy. Has been updated based on the feedback we had from the workshop we had with elected members. I just want to point out there is an error, paragraph 10. The paper was put together pre-COVID-19, so the consultation dates proposed at paragraph 10 talk about 3rd of April to the 15th of May. Those dates should actually read 20 through till the 27th of July. So we've allowed, I guess, a bit longer for the consultation than we would normally do, to allow for the fact that depending on how we do that, a little bit longer, so 6 weeks rather than 4 weeks. Other than that, if I could just take the paper as read and hopefully try and answer any questions.
Right, question time. James Coates.
Thanks, Guru. Look, Sean, thanks to you and your team. I didn't have as much involvement as I wanted in this due to my own personal circumstances and also just the COVID situation. And also when the workshop was held, I was at the Regional Transport Committee in Wellington, ironically. But that being said, I had full confidence in the staff, and in reading through the document, I think it well represents our community and the challenges it faces. I've got a couple of comments or questions that I didn't pick up earlier, and I just wanted to check on them with you. The first one is on page 66 of the report. And it might just be in the layout of the actual document. Are you there now, Sean? Can you see?
Yep.
Under executive summary, it refers to the outcome and vision, and then it goes on to say, therefore, the strategy has established 5 outcomes. And below that, there are 7. The focus area refers to 7 focus areas. And so I'm just wondering, in terms of the layout, how that, you know, are those bullet points meant to be below the focus areas, or? And happy to
they could well be.
Happy to leave that with you.
Yeah, yeah. So I can check back with Susan. If we need to amend it, we can change the layout.
Thank you. And the last one, because as I said, I think the team have done a fantastic job from what I can see, and looking at the feedback. The second point and the last point that I'd like to make is just around page 84, around the summary of key challenges. And I'm being parochial here, but in the Otaki section, it has 2 there, naturally the bus services and Choo-Choo, the rail connectivity. I would add there the stride and ride sort of shared pathway east-west connectors. It was something that I was a bit aggrieved about, where we had stride and ride in the south of the district and promise of it in the north, which didn't eventuate. So I think those sort of east-west other modes of transport sort of connectors possibly could go in there.
Sure, I know there has been some work done in that space, and I know that Stu is pulling together I guess a strategy on that, but yeah, happy to include that to ensure then that it can be underpinned with funding if that's available from NZTA. So, yep.
Yeah, that would be fantastic, Sean. And I do know that the team have been working on that, and we've talked about Riverbank Road and others, but I think having it in there would help give clear direction around the priority.
No problem.
That's it from me. Thanks very much to the team.
Thank you. Jocelyn Pravnov.
Oops, you don't want to see my pile of things. Yeah, so thank you very much, Sean and the team, for this. So I just wanted to draw people to the map on page 71, I think it is. So on that page there, it shows you, so it says there's 403 403 Ks of sealed roads, and there's 427 Ks of footpaths. So when I actually did a search on cycleways or footpaths, actually I didn't search on footpaths, but there's actually not really much mentioned on that, whereas that's obviously a key part of our district, and it's a key part. You know, basically it's something that's very well used. And I'm just wondering whether something, you know, but the strategies, you know, obviously through the advisory group, there's quite a lot of stuff in there about various strategies and about whether something could be added into this document about that.
So what the question was, could we add?
Yeah, so I suppose what I'm saying is that basically we've got all these sealed roads, but we've actually got more footpaths, but cycles, you know, cyclists are not included. There's not one word that uses cyclists in this whole document. And so really that, you know, the silent, I suppose, motorisation, or the silent way that people get around is not really included. And it's actually a key component of the way that people do get around in terms of both transport and for leisure. And certainly the sustainability of it as well is also very important. And I suppose the strategy around that would be about, you know, what the aim is in terms of, you know, building more, what the process is about building more, how the interconnectivity and how they relate to, I suppose, the roads as well. You know, options for people, how they connect to bus routes, that sort of stuff.
Right. So this isn't the delivery plan or the mechanism around delivery of those projects. There is a section in here that talks about pedestrian network, and there's also a section that talks about multimodal transport.
Yeah, but it's not really. There's a lot of cyclists here.
So I'm still not quite sure what you're asking us to do.
Yeah, well, I suppose putting something in there about, you know, what our strategies are around, you know, for cycling, or, you know, improving. I suppose it's about safety and making it easier for people to do it and to encourage it.
So one of the key areas that's mentioned in here is safety. That's for all road users.
Yeah,
including
I know.
Cyclists.
Yeah.
So we could make reference to the CWB strategy if that isn't already in there.
Yeah, well, there is a couple of mentions made of it, but maybe just pulling out one or two of those key points.
Yeah, if you have a look at page 88.
Okay. Sorry, I just have to scroll through. God, it's a long way down, isn't it?
So there are a number of bullet points on page 88 that talk about the continued development of cycleway walkway, ensuring a high level of maintenance of the cycleway walkway right-of-way network. There are a number of references on that in that section.
Yeah, I suppose, you know, I was maybe hoping for a bit more in there, but, you know, don't know what other people think about that.
Again, this document is just going out for consultation. So if you'd like us to, if you've got more comments, happy to take those on board offline and look to see if we can beef it up if it isn't already in there.
Yeah, okay.
You happy with that?
Yeah, that's fine, yep.
Sophie Hanford.
Yes, I think I'm unmuted there. Cool. Thank you for that, Sean. And I was actually at a low carbon Kapiti meeting yesterday where Suzanne came and presented, so similar kind of thing to what's been said today. But just around the outcomes, I was wondering whether climate and mitigating the climate crisis could be kind of pulled out a little bit from that environmental focus. Obviously, it does fit within that, but I would like to see more of a focus on emissions reduction in response to the climate crisis, especially when we had a meeting with the Wellington Regional Climate Change Working Group and found that 57% of our district's emissions are transport related. So that is a huge percentage of our emissions, and something that we should take very seriously. And to see that represented in one of those key outcomes of sustainable transport, I think would be good to kind of tease that out a little bit, if that's possible to do.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. I actually thought we did some of the feedback at the workshop we had was talking about that climate change as well as the environmental. So you're happy to have another look at that and see if we can.
Yeah, cool. I did notice it was there, but there were just some points where, for example, the environmental enhancements side of things, I think, specifically mitigating the climate change and mitigating the climate crisis would be good to just make that very specific and clear. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. Look, it was just a quick question, Sean, and I did write this question to Suzanne just to give her a heads up. I was just really curious to know why air travel wasn't included in any way, shape or form in the account, in the report.
Yeah, I was aware that you had a question. I think primarily because of our indirect involvement in that area, but we could certainly look to beef up a bit around advocacy within the document with regard to, I guess, both air travel and freight and bus services, those types of things in terms of emissions reduction.
Okay, thank you. And just on that, last triennium, we were asked by our chairs before meetings that if we had any specific questions for staff or report writers, to actually be polite and give them a heads up a few days before the meeting as to what your question was, and it certainly made for shorter and nicely organised, concise meetings. So just a thought going forward.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. He said thank you. Councillor Holbrook.
Sorry, I'm just down to one device. So as this is a draft and we're approving it to go out for public consultation, maybe there's an opportunity kind of 2/3 of the way through that process. It actually says it's going from the 3rd of April to the 15th of May in the report. I was just trying to find the paragraph number. So maybe we need to tweak the dates, or have I got confused about the process somewhere? But if this is going... Sorry?
Paragraph 10, sorry, Councillor. You might have missed the start of the paper. Paragraph 10 is not correct. It's going out on the 22nd of June. So there is plenty of time.
Yeah, sorry, my sound's been a bit glitchy. So yeah, that's good. So so maybe we could have just a little tack on to one of our briefings, another little workshop about this, so that we've got a chance to, say we get any feedback, so that we can present that, or if we have any further thoughts, because reworking this strategy now probably isn't such a fruitful way to spend our time at nearly 5 o'clock. Just a suggestion. Also, are the community boards going to have workshops, and maybe we could just tack onto them as elected members?
So we had a workshop where
I remember that.
Yeah, I guess the process that we presented was that we would have that workshop. We would then pull all of those comments into the draft. We would then bring the draft back to this meeting. Then we would go out to consultation. I guess there's no reason why we couldn't take more submissions from the community boards or the councillors through that consultation process, or in advance of it, if you have specific things that you would like, or have issues with what's in the current draft document.
Yeah, let's maybe flag that as an option if enough of us ask for it. But for now, as it we're just approving this to go up for consultation, would it be okay if I move the recommendation, Mr. Chair?
If the portfolio holder is not around, you can.
Happy to second. If
James, would you want to move this?
Look, I'm happy either way, Guru. We just get cracking.
Okay.
Gwyn's raised his hand.
Gwyn. Move by Gwyn Compton.
I was just going to say I'm happy to second it from
Well,
James.
you got it the other way around. And
okay, I will step back to the transport and train aficionados.
Seconded by Councillor Holbrook. Resolution 27. All those in favour, vote you. Press your buttons.
We have 10 votes yes, and I think Councillor Randall had to leave the meeting.
Right. Keep an eye on those who's leaving, because I think Angela Buswell may. Oh, that's carried. Sorry. Angela Buswell is going to leave at 5. I just want to keep an eye on the quorum. So remaining members don't abandon this meeting. Okay,
we're nearly there. We're nearly there.
Item 8.4, finance report as of 31st March 2020, page 95.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Behalf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I will, given the time, I'm just going to take the report as read. No introductions from me. I will point out, thank you to Councillor Coots. On page 98, paragraph 18, there is a typo. The year-to-date variance is indeed favourable, not unfavourable. I'd like to move to questions, Mr. Mayor.
We're not going to ask the question about how that happened. Any questions? No. Well, somebody move this then. Resolution 89 to 91. Martin Holiday, if you got a question, you're going to move it. Martin, you're going to move it.
No, just a question. I did some very questions here, but I'm going to hark back again. Look, in general, I'd like to have a training in this area. I have asked for one before. I can't speak for other councils, but I struggle with some of these formats and the set out, and I want a better understanding of what I'm reading. Would be much appreciated. Derivatives, borrowings, and how it relates to the 166 million net, the debt relationship, paying off debt with pre-funding aspects, and yada, 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 yada.
Okay, can I just do in there, Martin? I think earlier on there was some requests to have a session on that.
Yes.
Yeah, I suppose that could be done offline, not necessarily now.
No, I just wanted to bring it up because the only time I tend to bring it up is at each one of these.
Cool.
Yeah. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Halliday. We're more than aware of your that. We did say that we would do some training in March, and then obviously we had the level 4 lockdown. So I assure you, it's on the list, and we won't disappoint.
No, appreciate that, Mark. That'd be great. Thank you.
Councillor Coates.
Yeah, and look, just to really back the staff there, Martin, I had raised that with Mark during the week as well around pre-funding and the other points that you've raised. And Mark had reassured me again that they had it planned in, and it obviously changed just due to COVID. So it hasn't been forgotten. It's definitely necessary to help everyone understand how we manage our finances. And I imagine will be happening once things go back to normal and we can meet and have a workshop together around it, or a training session. I do have a question just around page 104, or it's actually just more clarification, Mark, if you could just noting there that we had, sorry, I've just lost my page. It was around the CapEx budget. From memory, 12 million less than originally planned was spent. Oh, there it is. Could you just talk through that? Because I guess it highlights the pressure around CapEx and delivering it within a financial year.
Yeah, sure. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So page 104 of the agenda, Part F, which is our capital spending program. And look, this continues to be a moving target, but certainly what we're flagging in this report is that we're forecasting an underspend of $12 million for our capital program for the 1920 year. So typically what does happen, as we finalise next year's annual plan and as we move to the fourth quarter, we do bring a paper to you seeking your requests to carry money over. Pages 105 and 106 do detail reasons for the carryovers, and you'll see on page 105 there are a number of projects that have been flagged to carry money over for projects that are either in train or haven't yet started and have been delayed due to COVID-19. So in summary, Councillor Coots, we're flagging to you that we won't spend $12 million of this year's CapEx program. We will bring another paper at the next finance update, and as part of the annual plan finalisation on the 25th of June, we'll be flagging to you and seeking your permission to carry over this CapEx projects this year to next year, because it'll influence next year's annual plan as well.
Thank you, Mark. And one further question. On page 105, there is $38,000 there in regards to the CAC, which I'm assuming is the Coastlands Aquatic Centre, cylinder replacement removable floor. Was that planned a maintenance budget, or is that a failure? I am certainly no expert on that topic, but I do recall we had an issue with the floor within, I think, probably the first couple of years of opening it, and had to spend money on it. So I just really want to understand what's happening there.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, thanks, Councillor Coots. Look, I can't answer that with confidence. So if I could please take that action and come back to you, I'll certainly do that tomorrow, if that's okay.
Look, no rush on that, Mark, and I apologise I hadn't raised it with you in advance. I'd missed that. I'd had it down as a question, so absolutely accept that you'll need to come back to me. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, Councillor Elliott.
If I'm unmuted, I'm happy to move the fastest fiscal report in the West.
Right. Have we got a seconder? James Coots.
Thanks, Angela.
Okay. I think so. It's been moved by Jackie Elliott. If I got a second as James Coots, it shows up here.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'd like to move
resolutions 89, 90, 91, moved
yes.
by Councillor Jackie Elliott, seconded by James Coots. Press your yes, no buttons.
We have vote yes with Councillor Randall not in the room.
Okay, so that's carried. Thank you very much. Now on to item 8.5, contracts under delegated authority, page 115. So does someone want to move that? Councillor James Could. Oh. So recommendation 6.
I move recommendation 6 on page 115.
So I got a seconder, Janet Holbrook. So recommendation 6 on page 115, moved by Councillor Coates and seconded by Janet Holbrook. Please press your yes, no button.
We have 9 votes yes. We're just waiting for one more. Or do we have an abstention?
I think Councillor Buswell's
has left.
Oh, so Councillor Buswell's left.
Okay.
9 votes.
So that's carried. Now we're on to 8.6, possible voting in Electra Trust elections 2020. You've got a staff member, anyone speaking on this?
Would you be, Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
Kia ora koutou, elected members. I have one small update to make for you all. On page 117 of members' papers, we refer to the number of ICPs belonging to the council and state the number 301. In fact, we have updated information now, and the current number of ICPs, or installation control point, for anyone that's wondering what that means, is 303, which entitles the council to 606.
So does that translate to 303 votes?
606 votes.
It's block voting.
So certainly I'm happy to take the paper as read and can would just, I guess, acknowledge that for the last 6 years at least, the council has chosen not to vote, not to exercise its right to vote.
Can I just add some elephant memory to this? It has been contentious in previous years. Simply sometimes council members themselves put their hand up, and Janet Holbrook is smiling there in the corner. So it has been always politically expedient to keep our hands off that. So yeah, anybody else?
So can I haven't got a question. Can I just speak to this just for a minute?
Yeah,
I mean, sure. I don't think I have a conflict because I'm not actually standing this time, even though I'm on the trust board. I just think there aren't any elected members standing this time. And Hora Whenua votes. They use their block vote. And that compounds the issue that though the trust board keeps an eye on things from Paikakariki to Foxton, because it's located in Levin and Hora Whenua use their block vote, there is an automatic advantage in my mind to candidates from the Hora Whenua. So we don't necessarily need geographical spread, but it means that we're not able to, say we know there's a quality candidate standing from Kapiti, as I think there is this time, we're unable to use that knowledge of that candidate to bring that into the democratic process of electing this trust board. So I know for the last 6 years we haven't voted, but in this particular instance, there aren't any people standing. And if we don't exercise our vote and Hora Whenua does, then it can lead to this kind of geographic inequality. Just putting my 6 cents in there.
Point taken.
So I might actually move. Actually, I probably shouldn't because I'm on the trust board.
No,
I'll just leave it.
Yeah, I think you should.
And I'll probably abstain now, but yeah. I just thought I'd just give people that background.
Yeah, thank you for the background and you're abstaining. I note that. Any other views? Martin Holiday?
Yeah, look, Janet, can you clarify how many votes does Hora Whenua have? Well, we've got our 606. How much do they have? Roughly.
Look, I can't answer that exactly, but it's based on how many ICPs they have.
Is there more of us than there is of them?
They probably have about the same as us because, well, there could be, I don't know.
And I guess, you know, what's the rationale behind us not voting? Has it been sort of a so-called conflict because we've had a councillor who's usually stood in those positions? Is that correct, Mayor Guru?
Well, I think at other times there have been 2 councillors who stood for it. Yeah, it's always been politically contentious.
I think Jackie might have a comment on that.
But having said that, I mean, Janet Holbrook's view is that in this time around there's no councillor standing for her, and she's pitching for Kapiti to have a presence down there so that she doesn't feel too lonely where she sits.
And
but she's abstained anyway, so she's not participating in this anymore.
So if we exercise our right to vote, how much influence do we really put over the vote process?
Well, you got 606 votes.
well, 606 votes. I mean, I don't know. Is it how many votes are out there? You know, is there like 700 or is there
No,
like
no.
7,000?
I think at other times when I've seen this, the block voting is actually significant.
Radio. Well, I reckon, my personal opinion, and then is I think perhaps it's time to exercise that vote so that we can influence in that area.
Jackie Elliott.
Thanks. It's in the past, and I'm going back maybe 4, 5, 6 years. There's been the block voting has represented about 1/3 of returned votes. So as Janet said, you know, and everyone in the Horowhenua Council supports a certain candidate, it's enough to completely nullify all of the public votes. And it's been quite significant, and I'm almost wondering, you know, if we were going to decide not to use our vote, if we make it another recommendation that we actually write to H2 Horowhenua District Council and remind them of the unfairness of them using their block votes continuously to put in their own candidates, which they have done clearly for decades. You know, we're not beyond writing to other councils and just saying, you know, on the interest of fairness. You know, that's just my suggestion. Otherwise, I am happy with what Janet has suggested about using our block vote this time. However, in the overall interest of fairness, I think it's extremely unfair for a council to use their block voting when we don't actually have any mandate whatsoever from our ratepayers on what their voting preference would be. It's their vote, not actually the council's. And that's how I feel about it. So I think in total, it's completely unfair to block vote. And I would like to move the recommendation that we do not exercise our voting rights.
Okay, so still others, Rob McCann.
Yes. Oops, I would like to support using our block vote. It's quite clear there are 2 candidates in the Horowhenua who will benefit greatly from a block vote. And I don't think, I like Jackie's optimism that we could write to the Horowhenua Council, but I suggest that it wouldn't work asking them not to vote for perhaps their former mayor. It might be a bit too much. I think we have 2 very, very good candidates who the council would well know and know of their history, who could represent our community. Either of them could represent our community well. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, Jocelyn, Gwen Compton.
I was sort of the view when we saw the report that, yeah, we shouldn't block vote, and I take Jackie's point. But yeah, Janet, she raises a very important point, I think. If Horowhenua District Council is block voting and it's potentially going to skew representation towards their neck of the woods, then we do need to consider it. Or I'd sort of, along with Rob, I mean, it's very optimistic to think we could write to Horowhenua District Council and negotiate a dente between us. I would imagine it would be the most sensitive negotiations since the strategic arms reductions ones of the 1980s. So I wonder, has anyone had a look at the voting results from previously to see what would happen if we did split can we split our votes between the 2 local candidates? Would that be enough to make a difference?
That's not a question I can answer today and would need to get back to you. Sorry.
We're now into election strategy for this, to back our horses.
Right, Jocelyn Probnow.
Thank you. I actually think we should use our democratic right to vote, and I also think Horowhenua should as well. We can't stop them from doing that. But I suppose, you know, historically we haven't done it, and the way that this paper is presented is that it hasn't provided us with any background to the 2 local candidates, or even even the 4, even though Lindsay and Brendan are well known in Levin. but I'm not even sure how many people we're meant to be voting for. At least it's just two. So if I could have clarification around that, please. So how many positions are vacant? Oh, 2 positions. Okay. So, you know, I know Lindsay Burnell's been on it for years. I don't know whether Brenda Duffy has been on it for years. So my question is, splitting the vote may not be a good thing. And so, you know, we really need to see the, you know, the CVs of these 2 characters, just to be, you know, open and transparent if we are going to have a vote.
So can I just note that the reason why there's no information about candidates is that this paper today simply asks for your decision on whether to exercise your vote or not. It doesn't cover how you would exercise your vote should you choose to exercise it.
So look, can I,
the council,
at this
we would bring
moment
a
then,
paper back.
can I at this moment then just test the ground by moving that the council exercise its right to vote in the 2020 Electra Trust? I'm going to move that as a test to see whether we got support for that. Can I have a seconder? Jocelyn Pravnov. Seconder.
Pravanov, thank you.
Pravanov.
Yeah, long A. Just think of an A, a long thing above the A.
Excuse my accent, madam.
I know, no, that's not you at all. It's
okay. Look, this
common.
is just to test it. That means the council will exercise.
Yeah. So I see that the voting's got to be done. The voting papers have got to be in by the 12th of June, which is not actually that far away.
I can speak to that. That's right, councillor. So what that means is that were you to vote today to exercise, or choose today to exercise your right to vote, we would need to bring a paper to the 11th of June council meeting where you chose who to vote for. And I would need to double check that that the votes can be made in half a day essentially, but on the assumption that they can be, that's the time.
Yeah. So I suppose it's checking to see whether it's a mail vote or whether it's a post vote, and whether having them postcoded is fine versus, I don't know what other means they use.
So okay, we moved and seconded. So
yeah.
Anyone debate on this? Jackie.
Guru, I'd already foreshadowed the recommendation 21 that we not exercise our vote and was waiting for a seconder.
Oh,
I foreshadowed that when I spoke.
Did that lapse because there wasn't a seconder?
No, no one asked for a seconder. I was kind of, well, it was acknowledged.
I didn't register that. Apologies. But it still means it just gets knocked out. We go back to yours.
Well, no, but it's a matter of which way round, isn't it? Because if this one doesn't get knocked out, then then it's successful.
Well, that's right. Automatically, yours will be successful. Your view will be successful. So can we just test it and put this up now?
I'd like to
anybody
abstain,
else want to talk about this? James Coates, you got your hand up.
I think we just need to move on. Councillor Elliott did signal an intention to move a recommendation. Let's put it, see if there's a seconder. If it lapses for want of a seconder, we put the other one and we move on.
So any other debate on this?
Are you putting Councillor Elliott's forward? Because she did note.
No, if you do that, then you've got to move and then say it is, will not exercise this.
I understand that.
I'm quite comfortable with either way it goes. It's quite clear cut.
We would have done it by now if you just put her and see if she gets a seconder.
Right. So okay, Jackie Elliott, have you got a seconder? No seconders.
Okay, thanks. That's all I wanted to do.
Thank you. So moved. Move Mayor, seconded Pravnov. That will exercise. Okay. I'm not going to exercise my right to introduce it. Anybody else want to debate this? No. I'm going to put it. Moved by Mayor and seconded by Prav now. Press the buttons.
We have 7 votes yes. Councillor Holborough has abstained, which takes us to 8. And then do we have three councillors that have left?
And Councillor Elliott is abstaining as well.
Councillor Elliott.
Okay.
Voting no.
Carried.
So 7 votes yes, 1 vote no, which takes us to 8. Councillor Holborough has abstained, which is 9. And we have 2 councillors that have left. Councillor Elliott has asked for a division to be called.
Okay.
Okay, the division is those in favour: the Mayor, Councillor Coots, Councillor Compton, Councillor Pravanov, Councillor Halliday, Councillor Haddonford, Councillor McCann, against Councillor Elliott, abstained Councillor Holbrow, absent Councillor Buswell, Councillor Randall.
Okay. Look, we're now on to 8.7 reports, recommendations of standing committees and community boards, page 119. And the resolution is on page 123. Any corrections? No.
No. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So can I move recommendation 17 that the council receives this report? Can I have a seconder? James Coates? James.
Happy to second.
All those, yep, can you just vote on this one, please? Moved by the mayor and seconded by James Coates.
Are we voting now? So we've got 8 votes yes.
Yeah.
And no votes no. We just have 8 votes yes.
Okay, so it's carried. Sorry. Confirmation of minutes. 9.1. Page 124. Any issues with this one? Any changes? This is for the minutes of the Kapiti Coast District Council meeting for Thursday, 14th of May.
Mr. Mayor, I think there's, I think Tim Power needs to speak to this.
Pardon?
Is that Tim?
Sorry.
I hear
Can't hear you. What's happening?
Sorry, was I asked to speak?
Tim, is this the space? Is this the space where you need to speak? We're up to the minutes.
Oh, no, I don't think we're going to do anything now, Wayne.
Okay.
The Mayor's going to deal with this in a email to councillors shortly. Sorry about that confusion over that.
There is confusion indeed. Right, can we go back to the recommendations? The minutes of the council meeting of 14th May be accepted as a true and accurate record of the meeting. Can I have somebody move this? Rob McCann moves this. Jackie Elliott seconds this. Can I have your vote, please?
We have 7 votes yes. 8 votes yes.
Okay. So the next item is public speaking time for items not on the agenda. There's nobody there. Confirmation of public excluded meetings, nil. I'll move now to go into public exclusion. Can I have a seconder? Thank you, Jackie Elliott. So moved by the mayor that we go into public exclusion, seconded by Jackie Elliott. All those in favor, press yes.
We have 9 votes yes.
Okay, we are now in public exclusion. Can you knock off the live streaming? And big issues. Thank you very much for your diligence and your considered engagement. Thank you very much. And thank you to the staff. Thank you also, Grayson and Tanika.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.